This day was a perfectly normal morning. The time on the clock was 7 a.m. It was time for the morning warm-up. Warm-up as every day began with a 10-kilometer jog outside. There was cold, unpleasant rain forming puddles, which is not very good for running. The training continued, and at 12 o'clock fencing began. It was fantastic, as many as 500 blows on the head. 5 evening training. Lee Ho-yun continued with the coach. It was difficult because he shouted that you need to do as many as 10 approaches. Lee Hee-yeon was unrealistically difficult, but he had to quit his job to keep training for 14 days. As he continued to train hard, someone who knew him kept asking him if he was crazy. Let's go back 15 days and something unreal and mysterious happened that changed the world, and it got crazy. People's smartphones began to receive messages saying that a monster had appeared in the Chano area and that all residents of nearby areas were asked to leave. There was widespread panic and people were frightened because reports said that the monster had been spotted in other neighborhoods. The youth started live streaming. The monster hunt viewers were watching live and spotted the monster. This scary video went viral when Lee Ho-young saw it. He was surprised at how realistic it was. He was totally confused as to what it all meant. Scary video, very strange messages. It was like a scary dream. Lee Hong was walking and was puzzled because the world is already very difficult to live in, and these messages and this video, but he did not want to believe that the video was real. With these thoughts, Lee Ho continued walking and thinking about this situation as he suddenly saw a very strange creature that was caught in a trap. He was very frightened at first, jumping up, for he had never seen anything so mysterious, which naturally frightened him. The monster was strange and was making wheezing noises with tears in its eyes, and Lee Ho felt like it was asking for help. The creature was kind of cute, but Lee Ho-young still did not dare to approach it because he did not know whether it was good or evil and what to expect from it. But as soon as Lee Ho looked into the eyes of the monster, something inside him pierced, and immediately he thought that in any case the monster cannot help although he wanted to. And then the monster showed Lee Hoon a picture of the monster. It was incredible because the monster had a family of little monster children. She was very sad holding the photo of her family in her hands. The monster was grieving for fear that she would never see them again, hot tears flowing down her cheeks. The monster silently held out something incomprehensible to Lee Ho-yen. He was wary of taking it into his hands. The unknown is always frightening, and he wondered if he should take such a risk. Lee Ho-young decided to help the monster and find out what was in the pouch she held out to him. She explained that it was the silver goblin's medicine. With difficulty, Lee Ho-young released the monster, and as a gift, she gave him this silver goblin medicine pouch. He took it and went home. Sitting looking at this drug, it was giving off a hologram. Suddenly, he heard breaking news on TV. He decided to watch it. The news anchor was talking about some unknown structures that had begun to appear all over the world. Lee Ho-young became very tense. The world seemed to be going crazy, he thought. First monsters, then unknown structures in the form of towers. Standing in front of the window holding the gift given by the monster, Lee Ho wondered if the apocalypse was near. He tried to chase these bad thoughts away. When suddenly something exploded outside the window, a powerful blast wave blew out the windows and several pieces of shrapnel hit Lee Hong. People outside the window panicked and chaos broke out. People were all scared, not knowing what was going on. When suddenly a tower-like structure began to appear from the ground, it was unrealistically huge with many floors. There was frightening breaking news around the world that the tower had already appeared in Korea. Lee Ho looked at it and didn't know what to do next. He thought maybe the silver goblin's medicine would make a difference, because if he took it, he should get something. But Lee Ho decided to take it when, if not now. When he took the medicine, he felt something inside him. Something inexplicable, something magical was happening to him. When suddenly something above Lee Hong's head appeared. This something was glowing bright blue color. He heard that he had received a sage window. But what does it mean? Holding out his hands in front of him, Lee Hong held a book that glowed brightly and was composed of mosaic puzzles. When he opened the unknown book, he saw that it was written about the end of the world and that it was necessary to master several quests before the apocalypse. The book talked about strength training, aerobics, and fencing. Lee Ho decided to put all his business aside and focus only on training. But suddenly, he heard that the gates of the apocalypse had already been opened. Lee Ho could not believe it because he had imagined it differently. Suddenly, from nowhere behind him appeared an ancient weapon. Lee Ho saw it and wondered why he needed it. Looking at the holograms, he was surprised at how much to read, but decided to open the status window and familiarize himself with the information. There was a lot of it. The status indicated that he was assigned the position of gladiator and that he was proficient in weapons, but at the first level, and the sage status window was open. Taking the weapon in his hands, he wondering if this was really the beginning. In the beginning, it said that he had to be trained and he had to fulfill one of two conditions: survive 60 minutes in the forest or find a way out and escape. After thinking about it, Lee Ho decided to take the 1-hour training session. After opening the status window, he realized that it would still force him to train. According to the strategy, he will have to hunt monsters for a moment. Lee Ho wondered if it would be better to escape from the forest, but banished these thoughts. Well, he thought that the training has begun. There is no turning back, and he took his weapon and went deep into the forest to catch monsters, taking all the courage in his fist. After walking a bit, Lee Ho met a one-horned raccoon creature, but it was very cute and not like a monster. How suddenly in an instant this cute raccoon turned into a really creepy monster with sharp fangs and claws. The raccoon pounced on Lee Ho, but with just one swing of his weapon, he was caught. Oddly how easy it was, but probably because he was level 1. But the level of swordsmanship consumes a lot of mana, Lee Ho thought, and decided to hunt as much as possible to save mana. When he opened the statistics, he saw that he had already reached the 2nd level and all NR and MR had been restored. And suddenly, Lee Ho saw that his level had been downgraded again. It made him angry. It turned out that there were penalties for the status window. But looking closer, he saw that his glasses were still intact. Thank God it wasn't a fine, but probably a mistake, he thought. Being happy about the mistake, Lee Hong had a bad idea and thought that it might be possible to cheat. He continued moving through the forest and catching monsters, increasing his experience level. After looking at Lee Ho's stats, he was happy to see that his level had finally risen to 2nd. But suddenly, he saw that the level had dropped back down to 1, but the remaining points were still accumulating. Then he decided that he would increase experience for this. There are 4 options: health, strength, dexterity, sensation. After thinking, Lee Ho decided that the most attractive thing for a gladiator would be strength will give a powerful attack, dexterity will give speed. But the most important thing for him at this particular time was still to raise his senses to at least level 4, and that was his goal. Still, he defeated the monster, one-horned raccoon of the 1st level, by increasing his senses. His 5 senses became stronger, and finding raccoons became easier for him. Now, Lee Hong had to catch as many monsters as possible to activate the hidden quest. A one-horned raccoon appeared in front of him, but this one was different from the previous ones, more powerful, more frightening. The battle with him was insanely hard. Monster was unrealistically strong, fast, his horn was powerful. This monster was not like the others. Lee Ho compared it more to an evil rhinoceros with evil red eyes. Lee Hong's battle with the monster continued. He could not cope with such a strong opponent, but still Lee Hong defeated the raccoon chief. He still passed the hidden quest and was rewarded with gold. It was a hard and dangerous fight for Lee Ho Young. The training is over. He exhaled with a sigh of relief, wondering if it's all over and he's achieved everything. As suddenly the space changed and from the loudspeaker began a broadcast, a voice spoke from the tower lobby. Everyone listened attentively. The voice said that 14 men were chosen and 11 women were sent here after training. Around the space began to move. The people present began to panic, and Lee Ho stood and thought how the world had changed overnight. He calmed himself with all his might, because he already knew about the apocalypse. He was sure of himself that he would survive it. They all ended up in the apocalypse tower. People were scared when suddenly a cute little bunny appeared in front of them. He said hello to everyone and introduced himself. He turned out to be the steward of the lower level of the tower. His name was Kum Kum. Kum Kum said that from now on, 24 players will play for survival. He also said that all Earthlings are in the same situation as them and that they need to work together to complete the missions on each floor and climb the tower. An overexcited Lee Ho asked Malosh if they would be able to go back to their normal lives after climbing to the top of the tower. Kum Kum replied that he didn't know. Lee Ho asked what was the point of them going up the tower and was told that if they didn't go up, they would all die. Then Lee Ho thought about the fact that no matter what the strategy was, many people couldn't handle it. The rabbit asked if there was anyone present who could destroy him, because only in this way he could get home, and promised to reward the one who would help him. After thinking it over, Lee Ho decided that it was like a trap. The rabbit must be up to no good. The rabbit Kum Kum turned out to be a level 55th steward, and it is impossible to resist the newcomers. After thinking about it, Lee Ho decided to just watch the situation and looked in the strategy guide, and it said to help the rabbit go home. His thoughts were confused, because before, when he followed the manual, he had no losses. Lee Ho thought to go to Kum Kum after all. Just as he was about to leave, another man from the crowd overtook him and said with a smile on his face that, "If you want to go home, I'll send you home." With a smile more like a grin, he kept laughing at Kum Kum, telling him not to regret it, and that he'd be tough to send him to the other side. The rabbit Kum Kum only stood and smiled, and so their battle soon began. The kid swung his weapon at the rabbit. Suddenly, instead of a cute little rabbit in front of people, became a huge muscular with unreal strength rabbit. He attacked the opponent in return. Everyone was horrified. Lee Ho was covered in cold sweat, seeing the lifeless body of the guy who fought Kum Kum, realizing that it could have been him. It was something Lee Ho was completely puzzled. He didn't understand because the instructions said to help Kum Kum had the strategy guide lied to him. And suddenly Lee Hong's sage eyes activated an additional function. He was very surprised that there were any other functions besides strategy guidance. Kum Kum. The rabbit was a cute little rabbit again. He stood nicely and begged everyone present for someone to at least send him home. But no one dared to go out and confront the rabbit after what they had seen earlier, and suddenly Lee Ho raised his hand and said he would. At that moment, Kum Kum asked Lee Ho Young in surprise if you have the first level, to which he replied that levels are important for cases, to which he replied that they are not. Everyone got into position, and Kum Kum said, "Come on, help me get home from this job." At this point, a girl came up to Lee Ho and began to discourage him from fighting. It is dangerous for him. All the others joined her and continued to discourage him. But then Lee Ho calmed them down because he had a plan to send Kum Kum home from work. And in that instant, the cute Kum Kum turned back into a vicious, huge, scary monster and fiercely attacked Lee Ho. The battle continued. And at that moment, Lee Ho suspected that Kum Kum was not telling the truth about the number of people in the tower on purpose to scare them into fear of being sent to the other world. But the fight went on. People standing and watching were very worried about how the fight would end and who would eventually emerge victorious. Lee Ho guessed that they were all being lied to about the fact that Kum Kum had sent the guy to the other world about the number of people in the tower, because in front of them was not a lifeless body, but just a hologram created by Kum Kum. Kum Kum was defeated, and you can imagine he turned into a round hologram. He wasn't real, just part of the show. You had to look around. It surprised everyone. While he was chatting with others in the tower, Kim Se-young came to him and was rude. He thought it was just a waste of time and that Lee Ho was just lucky. He was painfully unpleasant, rude, talking nonsense about what a hero he was, and if he'd seen it before, he would have volunteered to fight. It was shameless. Lee Ho should have given his chance to Kim Se-young not to take it. No way. As Lee Ho did not try to restrain himself, but angry he clenched his fist and made it clear to this rude ignoramus that he would not yield to anyone. Suddenly, all heard the announcement that now they will be credited gold for the number of monsters caught. They can spend it at the storefront. It was also said that one player had the largest amount of gold, 7,400. It was very surprising to everyone who was able to get so much. Yes, of course that player was Lee Ho, but to avoid envious people, he decided not to tell anyone about it, just to keep quiet. Here in the showcase is open. There was indicated 3 things on which you can spend gold, is the purchase of things to increase the level of skills and increase statistics. It would be unwise to spend all the gold. Lee Ho decided to set all his characteristics to 20 units first, but Kim Se lamented why everything was so expensive. Suddenly, Lee Ho was called out by a pretty girl. Her name was Chae Yi-seul. She had reached the 3rd level and surprisingly, she wanted to ask for advice. She was looking at him with those cute eyes, praising how brave Lee Ho was even though he was only level 1. They had a nice conversation. Lee Ho gave her a lot of good advice. He advised her to increase her strength without fear of spending gold. She thanked him. Suddenly, they heard an announcement that a mission was about to begin on the 1st floor and they needed to form into groups of 3. Players without groups will be randomly generated, and they only have half an hour to do it, but Lee Ho didn't expect the joint mission to come so quickly. Kim Jun-sung suggested that everyone reveal their professions to make it easier for them to decide. He thought that there was no reason to refuse to have a Hitler in his group, especially since she was so cute. Unfortunately, the other players did not want to team up with him because few people would want to team up with a gladiator of the 1st level is not an attractive proposition. Almost all the players were divided into teams corresponding to their levels, so it seemed that Lee Ho's team hadn't been assembled, but 30 minutes had already passed. And what was the surprise when they got the rude Kim Se-young on the team? He was rude. Lee Ho wondered if he could even play with him. The first mission began. They had to destroy the Kobold tribe, and they only had 12 hours to do it. As expected, Kim Se-young didn't want or know how to work in a team. He wanted to complete the mission alone, but Lee Ho reminded him that it was a team mission. The team started to move, but their disgruntled teammate kept muttering and muttering. He was not happy with everything, and it made the rest of the group very angry. The group continued to move through the mountains, where there were an unrealistic number of bugs that were very bothersome to the grumpy Kim Se-young. Chae Yi-seul asked Lee Ho if the monsters of this tribe are strong, to which he replied that he thinks they are strong, but they are still on the 1st floor, then they can handle it. He also said that they should be very careful and vigilant, as this is the Tower of Fate and anything can be expected. Chae Yi agreed with him. Suddenly, they saw an unrealistically huge monster on the way. It was a level 5 kobold, and it was nothing like the ones he had fought before. They managed to hide behind a tree, but Lee Ho decided that they should not hurry to come out, and it is better to look around so that there were no other monsters. Suddenly, they heard something and it turned out to be Kim Se-young. But was he the only one who was going to fight the monster? The monster looked at him in surprise before Kim Se-young could understand anything, but the battle between the two of them continued. Watching what was happening from his hiding place, Lee Ho thought about how he could make such decisions alone, since they should work as a team. Suddenly, in the midst of the battle, Chae Yi-seol came out and decided to help Kim Se-young, since the monster looked very strong. Undoubtedly, Kim Se-young fought valiantly, but even so, he couldn't stop grumbling. But something was wrong. Watching the battle, Lee Ho noticed something strange. For some reason, compared to the monster's strength, its damage was very weak. When suddenly he got a new manual that said, the kobold monster didn't attack the first for nothing. Kim Se disturbed it. Well, no, you have to think positive. I thought Ho thought it was a good idea to catch one to study. As the battle continued, suddenly something happened to Kim Se. His strength seemed to increase. His punch became unrealistically strong, and it turned out that a level 1 stone fist was activated. A second monster suddenly appeared, but it was different from the first. This kobold monster was stronger, and he was already level 6. He's going to be hard to beat. When everyone thought that failure was inevitable and that they could not win this battle, suddenly Lee Ho came to their aid, and there was surprise in Chae Yi-seol's eyes. Because his weapon looked special, he split a ripe apple in two with dexterity and ease. This fight was won thanks to Lee Hong activating the first level of swordsman. But everyone realized that it was not only because of this that they had defeated Chae Yi-seol, looked at him with a rapturous look of gratitude. And then, looking at them, Lee Ho decided to tell them that while on the trees around them, all the fruit had been eaten. One fruit was untouched. He got new guidance that he needed to pick fruit from the mountain. The kobolds are vulnerable to it, so Lee Ho did. After a tough fight, Lee Ho was gallant. He gave Chae Yi-seol a hand up to help her stand up and see how she was doing, which really pissed off Kim Se-young. Suddenly, Kim Se-yeon began to shout nervously, insulting Lee Hong. He didn't like that Chae Yi-seol thought she survived because of him. He yelled that Lee Ho was hiding somewhere when it was dangerous, that he would have sent the monster to the grave without his help. But as it was, Lee Ho just calmly replied to him that he had understood everything about him back when he had swallowed the characterization points. A nervous Kim Se-yeon continued to resent why he, with such a high level, had to put up with this, and they continued on their way. And suddenly, they came across the mysterious settlement of Kobold. They decided to go on whatever it was because they had a mission. They entered the tribe and the battle began. Arrogant Kim Sang boasted that he was the strongest in the world of fists and that he could handle such monsters. While he was fighting the monsters, Lee Ho and Chae Yi-seol started to rejoice for some reason, if the Kobold tribe had been defeated. When Kim Sung was attacked by two monsters, he couldn't fight them off. He was crying and begging for help. Suddenly, he realized that someone had helped him as the kobolds had stopped hitting him. But who had helped this brute? To his surprise, Lee Ho was standing in front of him, and he reached out to help him up off the ground. He smiled sweetly and asked Kim Se-yoon if he had a comfortable ride, because he wanted to accomplish the mission himself. Suddenly, they heard a voice from somewhere telling them to go back to the tower lobby. Did Kim Se-yoon realize he was wrong and fell at Lee Ho's feet asking to be his big brother? At this time, Lee Ho got the second level. He replied to Kim Se-yoon that he was the only one he treated as a brother, and it was his brother. Kim Se-yoon's face twisted with anger because if anyone found out, it would be the end of him, but he couldn't take back his word. When they entered the foyer, they saw that they had accomplished the mission first, and it was thanks to Lee Hong's luck. But Chae Yi-seol disagreed. She thought it was because of Lee Ho's observation and that she would never have guessed the poison herself. Here comes the team of Kim Jun-seong and Seo Ju-ho, but since they came back so quickly, they also figured out the poisonous fruit. But will the other teams be able to come back? Suddenly, everyone saw that another team had returned, but they were exhausted and couldn't stay on their feet. Those present were puzzled as to why so few teams had returned and asked the last team how the other teams were doing. The returning player, kneeling on his knees, remembering all the horror they had to endure, could not hold back tears through his nickname. He replied that only they survived. They were distracted by the nasty hissing of the loudspeaker, which began broadcasting again, saying that the mission on the first floor was over for everyone. But the players started shouting that not all the teams had returned from the loudspeaker and were told that not everyone had survived. 8 people had gone to the afterlife. Everyone realized that not everyone would make it through this mission, but how many more would have to sacrifice to end it all? The team that came back in full and cleared the first floor first would be the winner. Everyone began to look at their results for completing each item. There would be a reward of 1,000 gold, totaling 2,000 gold, and Lee Hoen's team won. Little Lee Ho was a little disappointed, but still decided that gold is a good insurance policy for the future, he decided, while he can get it as much as possible. All the other team members were very interested in who passed all the tests of the first floor and took the first place. There was no point in hiding, and Lee Ho said that his team won first place. But Kim Se-young began his repertoire of mocking the other players. The players were very surprised by the result that this team won. Kim Sung asked what was wrong and why they were dissatisfied, and the players began to deny it. Oh, how Lee Ho was amused to see Kim Sung, because he remembered how recently he was beaten up by the kobolds, and now he's acting like a hero. The players were whispering about him that he had earned a lot of gold by doing nothing, that he had gotten the first place with the second level, but Lee Ho couldn't believe it himself. Jae Yi-sol decided to stand up for him, but Lee Ho stopped her. He wasn't going to listen to them and affectionately asked her to look into his eyes to distract her. Kim Jun-sung and Seo Jun-ho calmed down the players. As it was not the time to fight, they had to keep working hard. Suddenly sounded a warning signal, and the blue torch suddenly changed color to red, leaving the players dumbfounded and stunned. There was an announcement that the survival rate on the first floor in Zone 2567 is below average, and that a penalty mission has been applied. No one understood what was happening and what would happen next. Even announced that began a deadly mission. What will happen to the players? Players are given 5 minutes during which time they must mentally choose one player. If they don't choose one, the vote will be given automatically. Everyone stood scared because no one understood what would happen to the one who would have more votes. All stood and waited for an answer. They found out that the one to whom more votes will go to the other world in the eyes of the players appeared fear panic. They did not know what to expect from each other. The time was ticking fast. Everyone was in panic. Jae Yi-sol offered to choose each self. Can they avoid this mission? But the players did not dare to do so. And suddenly, the first player named Seo Ji-hong made his choice and it fell on Lee Hong, but he didn't know that everyone would see the result of his choice. No one wanted to go into the afterlife. Jae Yi-sol stood on her option, but no one was sure that this option would work and they would all stay alive. Surprisingly, everyone decided to vote for Lee Hong. The players decided that since he's level 2, it's easier to vote for him. And only Jae Yi-sol didn't want to give him her vote because it was possible to follow her plan and save Lee Hong. The masks had fallen, and it was clear who was who. The last, with a snide smile, Kim Seen gave his voice, but he probably forgot that it was Lee Ho who saved him from the kobold monsters on the first mission. Time was up, and now this deadly portal opened up. Lee Hong didn't know what awaited him in this portal. He approached the portal entrance. He was fearless, it was game, and Lee Ho was ready for this mission. He didn't want to talk about guilt, about relief. He decided to silently walk up to the portal, but he didn't feel like a victim. A manual appeared saying that Lee Ho had a high chance of completing this mission and that he should expect gifts. The players were sad and felt sorry for Lee. Hong Kim Jun-sung said that he felt sorry for him even though they didn't know each other very well, but he thought they were comrades. Kim Sung was the only one who still shamelessly believed that since Lee Ho had a second level, he had achieved nothing but was only pulling benefits from him and not achieving everything himself. Everyone was discussing and wondering if Lee Ho would come back from this mission in one piece, but he was good, and the guys believed in Neo. Meanwhile, Lee Ho found himself in a place that reminded him of the kobold tribe, and it made him feel creepy. He studied the guide on his hologram and thought about the fact that he was still going to vote for himself, but it was good that things were going his way. Ho's premonitions were not good, and he heard that the kobold hunting party had returned. The mission is very difficult. He has to send the chief and the hunting group of kobolds, who are so angry about the death of their tribesmen. This kobold leader was the boss of this dungeon, as a 12th level leader, but he, like the others, was vulnerable to poison. That's good. Preparing his weapons for battle, Lee Ho thought about how he would be alone against the boss and the other kobolds. It seemed almost impossible. The battle was not easy to fight. Alone a bunch of monsters is not easy. Lee Ho activated basic weaponry. The group was defeated. Only the boss was left. Still, Lee Ho decided to first see what the boss monster of the death mission was. He was huge and intimidating. The fight continued to be brutal, as Lee Hong's opponent turned out to be a very strong monster for a reason. He's the boss. He threw a punch at the boss, and the boss minimized it by jumping back during the punch. But it's a monster boss, and you'd expect that from him. When all of a sudden the monster boss started squealing and just ran away. That's the twist that the monster boss suddenly got. Suddenly, the moon in the sky turned bright red. Lee Ho and the boss monster looked at it and didn't understand what was happening. In the lobby of the tower, meanwhile, Kim Se-young was telling everyone that Lee Ho had already gone to the other side, and he decided that he would be the one to guide the other players to the end of the floor. But Jae Yi-sol didn't stop praying for Lee Hong. Even though Kim Sung kept saying that he was dead, she just didn't believe it. Jae Yi-sol couldn't take it anymore and yelled at Kim Sung so that he would have a conscience, at least in this situation that is happening to the world. In the midst of the arguments, suddenly everyone was distracted by a light. It was as if the portal where Lee Ho had gone had reopened, which everyone could hardly believe. He went out with a smile on his face because he was happy that he had managed to pass this mission and come back alive, even though he was a little wounded. In this mission, The kobold chief had a peculiarity because when his eyes turned red, his abilities increased and he became stronger. But Li Ho did not give up then, because he saw that to defeat Chief Kobold he only needed one blow, but how to do it he did not understand. This monster chief was very strong. He easily punched a hole in the wood as if it were soft taw. He was tasked with figuring out how to defeat the kobold, but his weapon can't penetrate a wall, it cuts. Li Ho then decided that he would try to overpower it when the monster rushed at him, and it would give him extra momentum plus his own weight. All this should work, thought then Li Ho, and when the monster came at him, he drew his weapon and gave it a crushing blow. Chief Kobold was defeated. He made it through. His ability grew to include stabbing. He passed the death mission and returned to the rest of the players. Koyi Sol, who was so happy, ran towards him because she believed in his victory and that he would come back alive from this mission. Suddenly, they were interrupted by the hypocritical Kim Se-young, who shoved all the players into Li Ho's arms, shouting that he believed in his brother, even though he didn't. He was also surrounded by all the other players, and they were curiously asking him how he was able to complete such a difficult mission. No one understood why Li Ho passed this difficult mission. He should have earned a lot of experience, but he remained at the second level. And Li Ho himself did not understand anything. He thought that the world wants the weak to remain weak, because since school no one believed that he can achieve success. But he knew from a young age that he had to be strong because the world is cruel and there are a lot of prejudiced people who are hard to change their mind. And only Koyi Sol never stopped believing in him and proving to others that Li Ho is a real hero. Not everyone could pass a deadly mission. Also, hypocritical Kim Se-young continued his hypocritical show, outraged that they didn't throw a comeback party in honor of his brother Li Ho. But Li Ho knew that he was just being hypocritical, that in fact he genuinely disliked him, and behind his eyes, he didn't have the best opinion of him. But no matter what, Li Ho realized that he had to do everything possible to keep everyone in the tower alive, so he stepped out and addressed the people around him. He took out his weapon and showed them that he already had an indomitable weapon of rare rank, feature strength, and attack 15%. Everyone was very surprised at this, for there was no information about this old long gun anywhere, but it was more valuable than a little experience. Li Ho said angrily to everyone that they had forgotten that they had almost sent him to the other side of the world, and now they thought he should save them. Seo Jihong came up to him and admitted that by voting for Li Ho he was being selfish, that their act was similar if they had just banished him. He was truly sorry that they sent him to his doom, and with tears in his eyes, he said he was glad that Li Ho had come back alive. The player A Suan-jin did not feel remorseful at all. She thought that someone had to go there and that Li Ho was lucky because he still received a rare weapon. Their argument was stopped by Li Ho because he started this conversation not to shame anyone, but to prevent it from happening again. It was clear from the first vote that the tower was trying to divide them against each other. It wanted there to be conflict and mistrust between them. He also said that he proved by his return that they could go against the tower's plans if they were together more likely to survive. Players listened to him and asked if he had a plan. Li Ho said he would look for ways to save as many lives as possible. Koyi Sol said that to do this, all the players must be together united, and all agreed for the sake of saving lives to return to normalcy. When suddenly appeared Cute Kukum and announced a new task, this game will be for survival players surprised that he reappeared. He told the players that the second level quest will take place in this location. It will involve 15 players, and its name is Battle Royale. The game should be easy, said Kumkum. It's just as entertainment for them, and that they shouldn't get upset. According to the rules of the game, there are 16 players and 16 of their doubles, with a total of 32 participants. They have to send all the doppelgangers into the world, but the doppelgangers will not only have the same stats, but even the same memories. The most important thing for the players was that for the double they do not get any rewards, but if they send another player to the other world, get a lot of rewards. The players didn't like these rules at all, Kumkum added. If no one sends anyone to the other side in half an hour, they will be called to the lobby and there will be trouble. The first level was not yet started as suddenly appeared a monster for the players. It was just a disaster. He was huge. Everyone in the lobby panicked, and the second level hadn't even started yet. Little Kumkum, in his usual manner with a smile on his face, reminded the players that they would be returned to the lobby in half an hour if they did not fulfill the conditions. Then the players decided to fight the monster, combining all their forces, but there was no point from this monster remained unharmed. They were doing everything they could, but nothing helped. They all had no more strength to fight and their mana was almost at zero. And when there was no more hope, Li Ho decided to try combining the indomitable weapon and the stabbing blow, but he wasn't sure if it would work. Then Li Ho gathered his strength and went into battle with the monster players, watched this spectacle and prayed to God that he succeeded. With a special stabbing blow, Li Ho was able to defeat this monster, and the players began chanting his name and cheering his victory. But Lee Ho-yoon felt that something had changed, and he was feeling worse. His well-being rapidly deteriorated. Glancing at the manual, he saw that he had used up more than his normal strength, that it would last 3 minutes. He lost consciousness and woke up 3 minutes later when the state of powerlessness was lifted. When he woke up, he saw the other players around him who were very worried about him. The first to speak was Seo Jun-ho. He said he couldn't believe why Lee Ho was so modest with his strength and that his fainting ceremony was perfect. But Lee Ho hit his head when he fell and didn't understand anything. He asked the people around him what happened and where is this monster disaster. The smiling cutie Kum Kum replied that it was just a demonstration and the monster Lee Ho sent back, but he guessed it was just a demonstration, nothing more. Also, Cute Kum Kum reminded me that someone has to go to the other side of the world, and maybe that sender will be someone standing next to me. Satisfied with himself, he said goodbye to the players because his work for the day was over and waved goodbye and left. Players in the lobby began to discuss how to pass this mission, because if in half an hour there is no lifeless body, they will again face the disaster. Someone suggested making a mark that only they would know about, but it didn't fit because the doppelgangers have their memories, and then Lee Ho called out to them. He explained that he had a plan that would require him alone on this mission. The players were very surprised at Lee Ho-young's plan because they didn't understand how it was and what they were supposed to do. Lee Ho explained that they should gather at the highest point of the floor, and if there was anyone else acting besides him, it was a double who could be eliminated. The players started to resent why they should listen to him and do as he says, even though he's really not bad. And Lee Ho recalled Kum Kum's words. He was sure it was the best plan, so no matter what the tower said, he was sure it was turning them against each other. The players begrudgingly agreed to his plan anyway to minimize the damage to them. Lee Ho convinced them that he would distinguish the doppelganger. Well, the second floor mission has been initiated. The rules are to send one person to the grave within 30 minutes. Looking in the guide, Lee Ho saw that he received a gift of absolute flair. It will help to distinguish doppelgangers. He rejoiced because he was sure that he can. He saw and felt that all 5 senses were developed to the limit, but he spent half of his earned gold on it, but it was worth it. Suddenly, he heard some mumbling, and it was Kim Se-young wailing about how he didn't agree with Lee Ho's plan. Suddenly, Lee Ho heard a horrible smell. Even though it was 500 meters away from him, he felt that it was a doppelganger. Immediately, he sent him to the other world. Looking at his weapon, Lee Ho thought that he was able to distinguish them and make the right choice. The main thing now is that everyone should stick to his plan. He saw that a player had been sent to the other world, but he did not realize who had done it, whether it was the doppelgangers who had started to act or which of the players had to be found out. He realized that he had to find him quickly and went to look for him. Suddenly, he saw that there were already 14 players, which means that one more player had been defeated and he had to find the culprit. Suddenly, he smelled that foul odor and saw the Lee Ho doppelganger attacking him. During the fight, the doppelganger was defeated. Lee Ho was afraid that it was his doppelganger, but it turned out that it was Kon Yoon-woon. He approached Lee Ben-cheol's lifeless body and noticed something strange. He saw his wound and realized that it didn't match Gun-woo's weapon. As he looked closer, he realized that the wound had been left by another weapon when suddenly, in the distance, he saw someone walking. It was Kim Jong-soon, who was shot in the shoulder with the same weapon as him, so it must have been his double. At that moment, Kim Jong pointed his weapon at Lee Ho because he couldn't tell the difference between a doppelganger and a non-doppelganger, but Lee Ho convinced him that he wasn't a doppelganger. After telling Lee Ho to watch out for his double, he fell down and Lee Ho helped him up. They were walking and met Yosol, who offered to help cure Kim Jun. But Lee Ho's powers didn't deceive him. He sensed they were doppelgangers, even though they tried to pretend they didn't understand by pretending to be players. It was decided that they would take one doppelganger each and send them to the afterlife for good. For a second, Lee Ho wondered why the doppelgangers stood so openly in front of him, especially Yosol knew about his strength. Suddenly, he realized that somewhere he had made a mistake and something was wrong with Kim Jones. He pointed a gun at Lee Ho and wounded his cheek. He realized that Kim Jung is not a doppelganger, but how come he is standing with the doppelgangers and fighting against Lee Ho with him? After looking at Lee Ho's stats, I realized that he was an archer and had previously been a deep-sea fisherman. Smiling evilly, Kim Jung kept asking Lee Ho what he felt in this situation, whether it was betrayal, disappointment, or anger. That vile Kim Jung didn't know that Lee Ho could see other players' statuses, and he saw that Kim Jo's stats went up, which only meant one thing. It turns out he was the one who sent the players to the grave, the one who turned out to be a traitor and a murderer. But did Lee Ho ask if you're doing it for the gold and stats that you're willing to kill people? To which Kim Jo replied that in a world where killing is not punished but encouraged, why not kill? And he liked it. Remembering the moment when Lee Ho proposed his plan, and Kim Jo was the first to agree to the plan. At the time, he thought he was just going along with it out of desperation. But Kim Jo turned out to be a psycho and a murderer. The fight began, and during this fight, Lee Ho realized that Kim Jo had more abilities than he had shown before he could release arrows in succession. Lee Ho wondered how he had managed to persuade the twins to fight with him for one thing, making a perfect strong team. To which Kim Jo replied like a deep-sea fisherman that to catch big fish, you have to be organized, so he did, and the doppelgangers filed out. The battle began 1 against 3. They are an insanely strong team of swordsman, healer, and archer, the perfect combination. But despite their superior combination, they were still powerless in the face of true power, and he was able to overpower the doppelgangers. When Kim Jo realized that he was powerless against Lee Ho, he knelt down in front of him and tearfully begged Lee Ho to spare him. He said he'd just lost his mind and didn't know how he'd crossed a line he shouldn't have crossed, tearfully asking for one last chance. But it was again his cunning plan to distract Lee Hong. Distracting him, he jumped up from his knees and tried to deliver a crushing blow. But Lee Ho could not believe him, and expected such a turn. He swung his weapon over his head and delivered a crushing blow, sending Kim Jon to the grave. Of course, he didn't want to do that. It's a forced measure. He saw that the way of the flesh had opened up to him. He allows him to walk in the way of the flesh. If he accepted this challenge, he could get stat boosts and doppelganger support. Then he realized how Kim Jo was able to control the doppelganger. A maiden appeared in front of Lee Ho and said that if he accepted the way of the flesh, then he would receive legendary level armor access to legendary skills. And he'll also get a significant stat increase and plus exclusive talents is a tempting offer. But Lee Ho didn't think long. Because he didn't want to become a psychopathic murderer, he refused the offer and went to look for players. After a while, Lee Ho saw all the players waving to him and beckoning him over. He was very happy that they were all together. He thanked the players that despite the fact that his offer was difficult to accept, they still trusted him. When suddenly everyone saw that there were now 2 Lee Hons, who to believe now because one of them is a double and whether he had foreseen such a situation. Then Lee Ho explained to everyone that he had plans to deal with his doppelganger first, but he was prevented from doing so by Jun Sung. But no matter what, this game will now only be between Lee Hoon and his doppelganger. But the other players didn't know what to do because they couldn't tell the difference between the doppelganger and the real player, so they asked Lee Ho to help them. And then Lee Ho thought that there were 8 players left, and if he revealed the names of those he had already dealt with, the real players would be identified. Then Lee Ho began to reason that why the first people he had to fight with were the doppelgangers Kim Soen and Jae Yi Sol, and they were the closest. He said that if the doppelganger is right, then Kim Jun Soon's doppelganger made it hard for the players to tell which Lee Ho is the real one. When everyone started discussing it, suddenly one Lee Ho called the other a murderer. But why? Then Lee Ho confessed that he was the one who killed Kim Jun Soon. The second Lee Ho was happy that the first one was giving up. Then the real Ho said he has a fact that the doppelganger doesn't know Kim Jun was a traitor, and he ruined the real player. An Sung Chan helped him win, and only then did the players believe that Kim Jun was a hypocrite and a traitor, and who the real Lee Ho was. Then the players all grouped together. They were all to follow Lee Ho as their leader, listening and executing his plans. Then Lee Ho gave his final suggestion. In this mission, players should spend all their gold and raise stats. They're stronger than they were yesterday and therefore stronger than the doppelgangers. Everyone realized that the upcoming battle would be fierce, but Lee Ho felt weak for some reason. He sat there wondering what could be the reason why he had gotten the special ability. But whatever it is, he that people believe in him, and he must do everything he can to save them and reach the top of the tower. The players agreed with each other that despite Lee Ho's level, he had done more than all of them together. He must have been given the ability but had his levels taken away. Thinking about An Se-chan, Lee Ho said that he was very cautious and prudent, and that he should be looked up to as a support for the future. Everyone apologized for doubting him. The first mission partners Jae Yi Sol and Kim Soen started arguing over who had noticed Lee's uniqueness first. Lee Ho was approached by An Se-chang and asked him to lead them to victory. The battle was coming to an end. The players had defeated what they thought at the time were all the doppelgangers, but were they? But it turned out that one doppelganger remained undefeated, but Lee Ho found him and sent him to the other side. The coward hid in the bushes. The players coped with this mission and returned to the lobby with almost the whole staff, and then the calculation of gold began. It depended on the work done. The players received different amounts of gold. Kim Sung received 2,000 gold, so he probably thought that was the maximum reward. But Lee Ho realized that it was because everyone had followed his plan. But seeing that he had received 12,500, he was surprised. When he reached 10,000 gold, he was able to access an improved store. He realized that to buy rare items, he needed to increase the rank of the store. When Yi-Sol saw that she had received 1,200 gold from Li Ho, she wondered why he had done that. He simply explained to her that when he fought the kobolds with the doppelgangers, she was there to help, and that because of her, they were smiling wherever they were. She was touched and moved by his speech and promised him that she would become stronger and upgraded her healing hand's ability to level 2. Of course, Li Ho didn't forget about Kim Seung. He gave him 200 gold pieces and advised him not to fool around, but to study more. He realized that despite his lack of seriousness, he could be nurtured and would be useful to the team. Kim Seong said that he was now a sycophant very funny. Now it's time for the third floor siege mission, and in it, players will meet players from other districts for the first time. Under the terms of their team is assigned an attack mission. They need to capture the castle and occupy the altar. There will be a 24-hour penalty for failure to comply hidden. The players have received a temporary item, the return stone, but what it's for they have yet to figure out. But Li Ho guessed its effect and asked Seo Yun to climb to the top of the mountain and open the gate. He realized that when he dies, this stone brings him back to life. Although he feared for his life at first, he did it because Li Ho asked him to and he trusted him, and now he is in front of the gate. With all his strength in his fist, he was sure he would defeat everything and be able to open this gate. With each blow Kim Se-young threw, the strength of the gate was rapidly decreasing, and it didn't take him long to open it. But it's not as simple as they wanted it to be. The thing is, it works differently. It turns out the gate takes 2 seconds to regenerate. As Kim Se-yeon listened, he heard the other team's players saying that they needed to put a shield on the castle wall to protect it. As he walked a little further, he saw the very altar they needed to occupy. There were about 10 players from the other team on it. The cocky Se-yeon remembered that Li Ho had said not to destroy anyone, but he was cocky and decided to single-handedly defeat the opponents, thinking they were weak. Before he could even get close to them, he felt that he had been hit by something powerful that he had not expected. When he returned to his own, he said that one of the players had a firearm, and it was very powerful. It's amazing because at this level it's impossible to wield it, Li Ho thought. Even their player An Sung Chan's military doesn't have such a weapon. Li Ho remembered the conditions that were offered to him at the second level, which only meant that whoever wielded it was a ruthless thug. He realized that it would be a hard fight, but Che Yi-sol came up to him and affectionately said that she would support him and the team members were ready to fight him. Li Ho's plan is for them to act because he has absolute instincts to see where the guards are at the castle. Se-yeon said there are only 2 of them. They'll approach the castle walls and Se-yeon will draw their attention to himself as he knows how. The guards will defend the castle, but even if they take Se-yeon's life, they'll think that coming back to life is his ability. It was a shock to Kim Se-young because he didn't want to die even with the possibility of coming back to life with the stone. But that's the worst possible outcome. Li Ho explained that it's for the worst and it will be a distraction while he uses his shoulder to deflect the arrows. He'll climb the castle and send the guards to the afterlife while they wait for him to carry out his plan. The team expectedly agreed to Li Ho's plan, but they will have to attack at full strength if they mess up. The opponents will know what the return stone is for. The players went to fulfill the mission. Se-yeon explained to them that he would open the gate, but if they delayed, the gate would close again. But after opening the second level of the stone fist and punching the gate, Se-yeon lost a lot of strength and powerless fell to the ground. Good thing they have Chae-sol the healer. When he saw the same player with the firearm, he realized that she was a woman. But how did she get the gun? From her characterization, he realized she was a level 15 assassin, which meant only one thing, that at level 2 she was a mass murderer. She pointed her weapon at Li Ho, and from a great distance she was able to hit him. She was more aggressive than he thought. But Li Ho wasn't stupid when he bought the leather Kali that saved him. He also calculated that since she was using the same caliber magazine as him, she wasn't buying items to restore mana. After calculating that she had 13 rounds left, it was decided to rush forward. They needed to get to the altar to win. The team rushed forward. But it was very hard, and An Sung Chang's military advice was to zigzag to avoid injury so she could hit the target more easily. They figured she only had enough mana for one shot and not enough to kill Kim Se-yeon. It was a tough fight, but thanks to the healer Che Yeo-sol being with them, their chances of living increased many times over. That lady Song So-eun was unrealistically violent, pointing guns even at her teammates and driving them into battle ahead of her. Close combat merciless. Long in it, the team lost a lot of players. Li Ho realized that they will revive, but how can you destroy people with such a calm face? With all his strength in his fist, Li Ho still managed to capture 1/3 of the altar, but for a complete victory, he needs to get rid of his opponent. In order to take over the altar, 3 more people from Li Ho's team had to go to the altar, but first we have to deal with Sion Sion. She threw a punch, but Lee Ho read it and was able to dodge it, which surprised her. Lee Ho explained that he was able to do it because of Sung Ju Hong's clue. In the past, he was a legendary ping pong player, nicknamed the Prediction Genius, and thanks to the game, he can determine where the enemy will hit by looking at him. At the wrong time, the opposing team finished with the opponents. Scene blurted out that they should hurry up before the opposing team's players came back from the dead. Then Song Soen realized what the Resurrection Stone was for. Lee Ho told her that it didn't matter if she could hit him, he could withstand it. He decided to still give her a chance to strike one last blow at him and finally end it for good. But Song Soen wasn't going to give up and give them the altar. Suddenly, she decided to raise her sniper level to level 4. The mission of the 3rd floor was completed, fighting a difficult opponent strong. At the moment when she was striking, Lee Ho at the last moment pierced her with his weapon. Then, the 3 players took their seats on the altar, signifying their victory. Each player hoped they would never meet their opponents again. A portal suddenly opened, and they saw all the players of the very group they had recently fought with. Here before the losing team, disaster descends on the players who didn't send anyone to the death on the 3rd floor. It was a frightening sight because they had no chance to regain their lives. The players panicked and asked Lee Ho's team to help them. Che Isel offered to help them, but the team didn't know how to do it. It was chaos. Suddenly, the loudspeaker rattled, saying that only one player would remain alive in the zone with 142 and that the groups were being reorganized. No one understood how it was possible if the only member of the opposing group who could send the opponent to the grave was Song Soen. But as much as the players don't like the new group formed against their choices, and suddenly they find themselves in the middle of a ruined city. The 4th floor's instructions are to hunt monsters to find portals to get out in 6 hours. Before they can recover, a catastrophe will strike the city. The portals are randomly generated. It was also said that there would be 20 portals in total, and that it was strictly forbidden to pass portals to each other. Players liked this mission because they finally have to fight with monsters and not with each other, and portals enough players only 13. As they were preparing for the battle, they thought about the portals, because they can't be transmitted, and if one person opens several portals, someone won't escape. Then Lee Ho wondered if the tower could not be so generous with portals, and most likely it was preparing a trap for them as always. Then the players decided that they would work together, and as soon as the portal opens, they immediately abandon the hunt and run into it. Looking and smiling at the team, Lee Ho realized that now the mission was understood by everyone, and now they had truly become a team. The newcomer Song Soen didn't want to work in a team, let alone listen to someone else and act according to someone else's plan. 12 hours ago, when she joined the team, no one wanted her on the team. She had a fight with Kim Seung. Lee Ho then explained to her that she was in a foreign land and that she should behave herself without causing trouble for anyone on the team. Standing in front of Song Soen's face, Lee Ho told her in her eyes that they were not friends with her and were unlikely to be after everything that had happened. Suddenly, Song Soen's face changed from beautiful to something horrible. Lee Ho saw that the Soul Killer wanted to make him the main target. Opening his guide, Lee Ho saw that it had been updated to say that his value had been recognized, and he was now the main target of the Soul Crusher. Back to the 4th floor mission, the first person to get the monster was Kim Se-young. Looking at him, he thought he wasn't that scary. After easily defeating the monster, Kim Se-young saw that a portal had opened in front of him, but he was eager to continue his hunt, so he didn't go into the portal. He went to continue hunting, and on the way he met Lee Ho. He asked why Kim Se-young was so surprised to see him, and he said no. He asked Lee Ho if he had opened the portal, and then he immediately guessed that Kim Se had opened the portal, and they went to him and Lee Ho forced him into the portal. He saw that his guide had been updated again, and it said that on the Day of Blood, a thug's characteristics are fully revealed and by stripping him. Of life on this day, she will receive many honors. Lee Ho didn't know when this day was, but was sure that many would lose their lives. On the way, Lee Ho met a monster during the fight. Lee Ho gained experience points. He realized that now he needed to become as strong as possible. He thought he should keep an eye on Song Soen and do something about her. Suddenly, he was struck by such a stinking odor that it was impossible to breathe, as if a lifeless body was lying next to him. When he opened the guide, he read that the stench comes from the orcs, but the orcs that came out of the portal stink even worse. In front of Lee Ho stood a huge green foul-smelling monster, and it was clearly not friendly. The fight was not very long, but it was tough enough. Lee Ho defeated the monster and a portal opened. But was it the right portal? When he met Song Soen, he had a plan to make her fulfill her mission to him. He abruptly fell to his knees in front of her. Surprised and dumbfounded Song Soen stood there and didn't understand why he did that. In the blink of an eye, Lee Ho looked up at her and suddenly pleaded with her not to ruin him, to let him live. On his knees, he continued to lament how unlucky he was that he had never won anything in his life, not even a portal. But Song Soen didn't know that this was his plan. In fact, he had already opened one portal and would have left quietly if he wanted to. He did it so she'd give him her booty. If he dies on this mission, she can't take his life. Looking at the monitor, he realized that there were 5 of the 20 portals left, which meant that his other players had no problems with it. He purposely moaned that there were few portals left, to which Song Soen became furious and shouted at him to shut up and silently continue hunting. After the fight with the orc, Lee Ho noticed that he felt both exhilaration and guilt after killing the orc. He compared it to his and Song Soen's relationship. She followed him around. Lee Ho saw that she was very tense. He asked her why he hadn't opened anything yet. He asked her to honestly answer how many portals she had already opened. Song Soen replied that she had already opened 5 portals. Then Lee Ho calculated that if she opened 5 and he won, the other 11 would be enough to open 1 each, and there would be 3 more portals left. He realized that if there were 3 portals left, it would be just the 2 of them on the 4th floor, so he decided to split up with her. Standing in front of the huge orc he had defeated, he suddenly saw that there were only 10 minutes left and he had to hurry. As he ran faster, he told Song Soen that he would get out and let her go her own way. Suddenly, she called out to him. He was very surprised that she could want anything from him. It's only 10 minutes away, doesn't she understand? Sensing something wrong, Lee Ho decided that the best thing to do now was to just run away from her. And then he felt her grab his sleeve so hard that Lee Ho almost fell backwards. Strong girl, he thought. Turning to her, Lee Ho didn't understand what was wrong with her, but Song Soen tearfully said that she didn't remember where her portals were. She didn't seem to be oriented. Of course, Lee Ho-en didn't leave her alone. He took her with him even though she still wants to destroy him. Back in the lobby, as happy as ever, Kim Se-yeon ran into Lee Ho's arms screaming that he knew he was coming back again. But instead of a hug, he got a fist in the face because he scared Lee Ho with his antics and almost ruined the mission. They were all happy to be back when they first met. They thought they were enemies, but now they're allies. Only Song Soen didn't want to be part of the team, and it felt like she and Kim Se-yoon didn't like each other. Thinking over the situation, Lee Ho realized that she needed supervision. He hoped she would feel indebted to him. Remembering the day of blood shook him, but still he thought that until that day, all should be well, nothing should happen. When that troublemaker, Cute Kum Kum, showed up again, which meant there would be a new challenge. Suddenly, Song Soen pointed her weapon at him and asked why he was here again. She just blew his head off. But nothing happened to him. He came at her and fought back so hard that she literally slammed into the wall. Looking at her so helpless, Lee Ho realized that the rabbit still took pity on her, which meant that the tower needed her for something. Kum Kum, smiling as always, suggested that everyone should calm down because there was a new challenge ahead of them on the next floor. But before the test, he changed the foyer to look like a library. But why, the players thought? And Kum Kum said that they should choose 1 book each, but their lives would depend on that book in the future, and they should choose wisely, he said. The players in the lobby wondered which books would be best to choose to be useful, but Kum Kum added that when the mission started, all the books would disappear. Having said goodbye, he disappeared again. The players ran to look for books because it is necessary to find very useful books for them. Of course, everyone was looking for books that belonged to their class, thought. Lee Ho suddenly he received a guide that he needed to find a certain book. Said about the book Chance Encounters of the SS Class Regressor. Lee Ho did not understand why he needed to read the novel, but there is no going back. The choice cannot be changed. Opening the book, Lee Ho didn't understand why he needed this particular book with a cheap title and content similar to idiotic pop fantasy. While the other players chose books that were related to their classes, Lee Ho already regretted his choice and felt like a total loser. He decided to walk through the library and ask the other players what each of them was reading. Suddenly, he heard some muttering behind a shelf and saw Song Soen reading a book, beating a toy rabbit and saying that she would kill it, so he decided not to disturb her. Time was up. They were carried to the 5th floor and found themselves in a strange room that resembled a classroom in a school. Time in the room seemed to have stopped long ago, and the players noticed that they too seemed to have returned to school age. It was funny to see a shaved Kim Seung. Yes, he was shaved, but the players noticed that he hadn't changed much. Looking at Chae Yosol, Lee Ho noticed that she had changed a lot but was still as cute as ever, but Jun Ho thought that she hadn't changed. Lee Ho looked around and saw a girl sitting at the desk with him and asked if she was Song Soen, but she was different, to which she got angry and shouted at him. Suddenly, the loudspeaker wheezed, all tensed up. What will be next? Broadcast Rabbit Kum Kum. He said that the new task of the 5th floor will be a role-playing game. He said that this place is a different dimension where monsters and humans exist and the players are now cadets and learn to be monster hunters. Here for 4 days will appear quests, and who will not cope with them will be sent on a deadly mission advising them to screw up less. The players were very frightened, but Lee Ho was calm because he had already passed the deadly mission successfully, but he realized that ordinary players cannot cope with it. After Kum Kum's command to begin, a memory download was triggered, as if their heads were being injected with memories they'd read. The injection is over and the quest won't start for another 4 days. So while the task started and suddenly the people who were motionless moved, Lee Ho wondered if this was a novel, and he and his friends would be the characters in the final roles when he noticed the handsome Oh Yoon Nam and decided that he was definitely the main character. And to top it all off, he turns out to be a regressor who knows the future. With this knowledge, he will have many chance encounters and gains immense power. The teacher asked a question about a substance, and he also said that for the correct answer, he would give points to buy at the store. Of course, the average cadet can hardly answer this question, but the handsome Oh Yoon Nam answered that this substance is called Exion. Smiling, Lee Ho added that Brown's team is currently doing his research at the University of Columbia. The teacher was surprised that there was such a smart cadet in the class, and points were assigned to Lee Hong. Now he understood why this particular book was recommended to him. But the handsome Oh Yoon Nam wasn't too happy about it and threatened Lee Hoon that he would take away all the powers he has. Walking around the courtyard, Kim Se-yeon asked Lee Ho how he knew about this substance. Lee Ho explained that he got it with his new memories. Lee Ho remembered this novel and thought that if the book was true, it would be now. Then came the manual for the new quest. All began to read. It said that they need to clear the dungeon in 37 time given only 1 hour. It was also said that in the dungeon will be a boss, and the item that when you win from him will fall out in the future is very useful. Deciding that this item should go to him, Lee Ho shouted loudly to the players that it was time to go, and they ran into the dungeon. Entering the lair of orcs, players met Oh Yoon Nam. He asked how they got into the lair that surprised the players because not only he can go there. As he watched the battle with the orcs, Oh Yoon Nam wondered why the cadets of this class were so strong. He was especially struck by the strength of Lee Hoen and Song Soen. They were insanely strong and experienced, and how could he not notice them? Was strange, he thought. Taking his spear, thinking that if he did nothing he would be left with nothing, he gathered his strength and went into battle with the orc. The fight was very spectacular, and Oh Yoon Nam's strength was unreal. Strength players were very surprised by such strength. Even Lee Ho was surprised by such a spectacular fight. But he will never give up. The difficulty is not to pass the quest to get the reward you need to defeat a lot of orcs and knock out the right to fight the boss. Of course, Oh Yoon Nam may be stronger, but seeing and catching monsters like that is still Lee Hong's specialty. No matter what the players thought, the orcs would not defeat themselves, and the battle went on and there were quite a few of them. Undoubtedly, Song Soen with her firearms went ahead of many players. She is undeniably a fine warrior. Even in this battle, Oh Yoon Nam with his golden weapon was superior. He could handle the orcs with ease. As the other players watched the battle, they noticed that Lee Ho was fighting more desperately than usual. They watched the cool Lee Ho with rapt attention and realized he was doing it all for them, even though they voted for him on the death mission. Taking up arms, they decided to go to fight for their Saint Lee Ho. When they heard the guys chanting Saint Lee Ho, he was very surprised at the heresy. All monsters were defeated was created boss room. With it can fight the strongest one player. All tensed who will be announced. It was announced that Yoon Nam would be fighting the boss, which made Lee Ho angry because he had tried his best. He couldn't give up, so he went to Yoon Nam and asked him to give it to him, to which he asked in surprise if Lee Ho had lost his mind and would never give it to him. Lee Ho asked him if he didn't want to know how to break the chain of regression, which interested Yoon Nam. They entered the boss's room together. Oh Yoon Nam pointed his gun at Lee Ho and asked him who he was and how he knew he was a regressor. Looking at him, Lee Ho asked if it was important and also asked if he was bored, referring to the 32-year winter. Oh Yoon Nam tensed up, and he told me that he knew his regression began in November of 17, and he was right. Then Oh Yoon Nam confessed that he is very tired of this regression. Lee Ho said if he gives up the boss room, he will tell how to break the chain of regression. He could break the curse of infinite regression. He knew Yoon Nam had dreamed of it for thousands of years. Lee Ho said it was the only option to accept the offer. Yoon Nam agreed to the proposal but warned Lee Hong that if he was joking, he wouldn't be happy and turned around and left the room. Of course, Yoon Nam gave up his right to fight in front of Lee Ho. A huge orc boss appeared. Seeing this monster, Lee Ho was covered with cold sweat from how scary it was, but he already knew how to fight it. Suddenly, the monster used the orc warrior's roar. Normally, opponents would lose their morale from this roar, but not Lee Ho, because his absolute sense of smell not only amplifies his senses, but also blocks them, and the mental sonic attack has no effect on him. Lee Ho took a closer look and saw that the boss had a steel torso, but the lower part was vulnerable, so he gave him a series of crushing blows and dealt with the orc boss. After clearing out the boss's room, Lee Ho returned to the team. He and Kim Se-yeon sat playing rock, paper, scissors. He was very nervous that Lee Ho was winning it all the time. He suspected that Lee Ho was cheating, but how can you cheat in this game? And Che Yosol witnessed a fair game. By the way, the item that fell off the monster was a beautiful ring with an emerald stone. It turns out there are only two magic items in this novel. The first is Yun Nam's weapon Gungnir, which is always guaranteed to hit the target when thrown. The second item was of the mythical ring of Neek Li Ho, the essence of which was that it increased the owner's luck, but it could not be given to others. He sat there thinking about the fact that he now had to fulfill his promise to Yun Nam, because there was only one thing in the world that he wanted. Sun Soin came up to him and asked him to play with her. She said it's not just a game of luck, but a test of reflexes. She said that her dexterity score was close to 50. She bet on winning 3,000 gold, but Li Ho raised it to 5,000. The next day, the cadets were assembled at a cliched stage. In front of them stood a huge, bright blue crystal machine for measuring power. The teacher began to explain that when they hit the stone, magic will be measured, and in 2 days the results of the measurement will be very useful to them. The first cadet went to the stone, and from the first stroke the result showed 43. Judging by the reaction of the cadets, it was an excellent result. The next cadet came out and knocked out even more, as many as 69, a result that surprised everyone because it's quite a lot. Kim Sayan came to the stone next because strength is his specialty. He hit the stone with his bare hands and the result was 75 without weapons. It was Song Soin's turn to fire her weapon, and her score exceeded the expected 98. The cadets who were not from the tower became hysterical and could not believe such results. Li Ho realized that the strength of his comrades was greater than that of the cadets. The exception to the rule was Yun Nam, whose strength was 115 and was considered the coolest hero by the cadets. At lunch, Kim Sayon asked Li Ho why he only hit 64, to which he replied he didn't want to bother with useless things. But the real reason only he knew was if he showed the level of a leader, it would be difficult for him to get into the dungeon training to team up with Yunam. At that moment, the second quest assignment came, and now they have 1 hour to rescue Yunam somewhere in the waterfront park, and everyone wondered where to rescue him from. It turned out that after returning from the previous quest, Yunam had beaten up some local hooligans, one of whom was Hapil. He was the son of the head of one of the strongest of the 10 Red Moon Guilds, Park Young-suk, and he sent his best men to take out Yunam. Realizing that there was not much time left and that Yunam was in danger and would not be able to cope with such strong opponents, everyone rushed to save him. Meanwhile, Yunam was already surrounded by Yoon Seok's men, who pinned him to the ground, saying how dare he offend their young master and that he was a scoundrel. When one of them suddenly felt a strong blow to his chest, it was Sung Sung who wounded him with her firearm. Despite the fact that Ho thought that there was no need to hurry, all ran at the bandits. They began to defend themselves, not understanding how ordinary cadets have such a weapon. Despite the fact that there were only 3 enemies, the difference in strength was very great, and it was decided to attack them from behind the scenes. The fight was hard. Even though there were only 3 enemies, Li Ho and Yunam decided to fight them together shoulder to shoulder. Of course, the time was not right for chit-chat. Yunam asked how they found him. Li Ho replied that he would explain everything to him after the situation was over. The enemies were very strong, and even the strongman Kim Sayon could not overcome them, but he fell face down on the ground. One of them told the players and cadets that they were protected by the academy, so they didn't even realize how scary the world really is. Li Ho asked Song Soin to cover their rear while they could still hold off the enemy. She doesn't like orders, but she covered them. There were wounded in the team, and Li Ho ordered them to retreat to Che Yosol so that she could heal them and they could return to the battlefield again. The fight was so hard they couldn't handle it. Then it was time to unleash the skills they'd learned from the books to win. Seeing that the forces of the cadets are increasing, the leader of the enemies decided that they are talking nonsense about some quest and showed that they are not as simple as they think. They swung their guns, and suddenly all around, enveloped in flames, players barely had time to cover themselves from. It realized that the enemy is unrealistically strong. Even though the players have already become a team during this time, this enemy is beyond them. They form a trinity. They need to remove one of them and they will weaken. Looking at the persistence of the cadets, the enemy remarked that they were stubborn and would have made good hunters, but they had run out of time and would deal with them now. Che Isol was the one who prevented the thugs from getting hurt in the first place, because thanks to her, their team was getting healthy again. But the co-commanders couldn't let that happen and stood up for her and fought with them because she had helped and healed so many. During the battle, one enemy was wounded, which broke their formation, and then a crack appeared in the iron door that was solid. But thanks to his abilities, Li Ho knew why they were in such an impatient hurry to finish them off. He told them that their head pack must be furious. The villains did not understand how he knew about their leader Park Young-suk from the Red Moon. Li Ho said that because of their leader's intemperance, many of their people have already died. The villains could not stand such rudeness and attacked the cadets, but they were met with a worthy rebuff, and only one thug was left of this trio. The cadets decided to take pity on them and not kill the thugs. knowing that their chairman would not be happy with their appearance. Gathering his strength, one replied that he didn't care, because today he saw the hunters who are the future of Korea, and he had no regrets. The quest was passed, and the cadets won this battle. The opponents wished them luck and vanished. The guys were very happy that, with their joint efforts, despite the fact that they were close to death, they coped with the quest even 2 minutes faster. Yoon Nam asked Lee Ho Yoon Nam if he knew what was going to happen to them today, to which he replied that it would be a good idea to start by thanking them for saving him. But it was hard for Yoon Nam to be thankful, for he was proud of himself, and yet he thanked Lee Ho, who wished him to take care of himself. Because this regression is more complicated than the previous ones, Yoon Nam asked if Lee Ho is also a regressor, and Lee Ho said no, he's more than a regressor. The cadets were gathered back in the classroom. The teacher began to form teams for tomorrow's tests. In the dungeon, everyone froze in anticipation. He announced that the leader of the 4th team, which included Woo Chi-ho, Shin Sung Bum Go Yeon Woo, was expectedly Oh Yoon Nam. And to Lee Ho's delight, he's on his team too. He needs it to get the award, but he shouldn't get excited too soon. Lee Ho is approached by Oh Yoon Nam, who wants to talk to him. He thinks that things are going to go wrong in the dungeon where they'll be training, and Lee Ho knows it too. He told him to tell Lee Ho what he knows. He said that in the novel's plot, only one of the 3 teams will be saved by Oh Yoon Nam. But unfortunately, he doesn't know all the details and reasons why it's the way it is. He can't really know everything. Yoon Nam grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and started yelling at him that something had to be done about it, even if it was a foregone conclusion. But Lee Ho didn't know what to do about it. In the midst of the scuffle, they were spotted by Seon So-young, and they certainly looked very ridiculous. The instructor gathered the team near the entrance to the dungeon. The team still didn't know what they were preparing for. They entered the dungeon. They were tasked with cleaning up the training dungeon and solving the problems of the underground disaster. Then their leader, Oh Yoon Nam, suggested to split up and explore the dungeon. Communication is decided to keep on the communicator. Lee Ho went down the empty corridor. Walking down the cold, dark corridor, he thought he knew that disasters would happen in 3 teams, the 4th being their team. In the 9th team of Yosol and Seo-young, he was sure that they would be fine. Yosol had the ability of a healer, and the tower would not let Seon Seo-young get hurt. The one he was most worried about was the 12th team. Not only is Kim So-yeon Kim the leader, but they're ahead. Suddenly on the way, he met monsters similar to wolves with red wild eyes. Lee Ho prepared to fight them, taking out his weapons. Lee Ho turned around and saw Ko Young-woo crying, and couldn't understand why he was crying, and begging for forgiveness. After defeating the monsters, he turned to Young. He asked if he still remembered blaming himself for the situation when they voted for him on the death mission. Without stopping crying, he kept apologizing. Then Lee Ho said that if another situation like this happened, he would have to do the same. He also said that they could die at any moment and Young-woo should save his life first with such a soft character. They continued on their way together, Ko Young-woo praising Lee Ho for being cool and asking him how cool he was before the apocalypse. When he thought about it, he answered that he had been in an orphanage and survived there, but when he grew up, he was just a poor office worker. The tower had changed Lee Ho a lot, but when he thought about it, he thought who was he to teach and instruct anyone? His thoughts were interrupted by Ko Young-woo, who said that he didn't want to take care of himself, but wanted to help everyone despite the difficulties and dangers, just like Lee Ho. Smiling, Lee Ho stroked his head and agreed that the most important thing was the future and not to always look back. Suddenly, Young-woo approached the wall and felt something as if something was going to come out of the wall. But Lee Hong's absolute sense was silent for some reason. Then he tried to sense something with the skill. He asked Young-woo to move away. And he used his skill as suddenly the wall shone brightly so that almost blinded the guys. The wall split, and they fell into a labyrinth in the novel, and Oh Yoon Nam never said anything about the labyrinth. Suddenly on the way, they met strange creatures. Jemba Jemba. They were something like elves builders. They were very surprised to see people. They were talking among themselves when suddenly one of them came up to Lee Ho and started looking at his hands. He wanted to see who he was because they were not characters in the novel. They turned out to be repairmen. They are patching up the holes in this novel. Lee Ho understood them very well because the novel was really not very good. That Jambov was very touched. At first, he wanted to raise Lee Ho to the ground, but realizing that he understood them, he said he would just wipe their memories, which made Lee Ho very angry. He explained to Jombom that if he forgot the maze, he wouldn't be able to the big plot hole. He asked them if they had found a way to patch it up. He was sure that no matter how bad a novel was, he'd always have something useful to learn. But still, Jam thought that if he didn't leave things the way they were, the affair would stain his reputation, and maybe it was worth a try. Then Lee Ho proposed the option of combining the 3 dungeons that simultaneously fall into madness into one. The Jambas thought about it. But according to the pattern, if the dungeon so grows, then the reward for its passage must grow, and this pattern cannot be broken. But the thing is, if OU Nam gets too big of an award, the plot will get confused, and Lee Ho suggested that he might get the award. But you can't have a minor character stand out like that, and Jam just erased Lee Ho's memory, so it was easier. Lee Ho woke up for being slapped on the cheeks by Young Woo because he was so worried about him, he thought the elves were torturing him. But Jamba's elves didn't wipe his memory because there was no point he would be gone the next day. Not right away, but Lee Ho noticed some kind of hammer from Young Woo. It turned out that while the elves were busy with Lee Ho, he stole it from them. It turned out to be a repairman elf's hammer of a unique class that repairs broken things and increases improvement, but it only lasts for a day. Then Lee Ho came the leadership of the hidden mission they need to finish the repair of the world of Roman to achieve the highest merit in it. What reward for this is not known. It turns out that Lee Ho had a secret pact with the elves that led him to this assignment, but in order not to cause plot holes, he had to act secretly. The dungeon began to get angry and the monsters became stronger. The 3 dungeons were connected. Lee Ho told Yo Won to be on the lookout. They need to find OU Nam somewhere in the northeast. Yo Woon is a researcher who can avoid the monsters and find him. The monsters have become much scarier and more dangerous than they were during the underground disaster, and some of them have started spitting poison. The cadets and players from the tower continued to fight the monsters together, but they were huge, evil, and poisonous. But even after hearing OU Nam's command, Lee Ho couldn't help them in the open. He must be in the shadows and clear the dungeon as quickly as possible. Smelling where the most acrid odor was coming from, he went there and met a huge scorpion monster that turned out to be their king. When fighting the scorpion, Lee Ho couldn't get to it because it was releasing an unrealistic amount of venom. He also had the thought that the 4th team had OU Nam and they could handle him, but he needed to deal with the rest of the dungeons. He needs it to get to the top and he couldn't let this disaster happen. He fought the scorpion desperately. This scorpion was invincible and Lee Ho could not get through to defeat it lying on the cold ground, he thought. Then he decided to use the one-time reward he received when he completed the side quest from Professor Shin Dong-hwan. It was the perfect shield that perfectly blocks absolutely any attack. Fighting with it would be easier. Thanks to the shield and the 3rd level of swordsmanship, Lee Ho defeated the boss in pass. The portal was still a dungeon, and there Seo Young Lee Ho was still worried about him. Surprised at himself for worrying about Seo Young, he moved forward to the dungeon, but it was strangely empty. Suddenly something emerged from under the ground that turned out to be a horny, unpleasant mole. When suddenly from nowhere they became very many, they were very fast and agile. Lee Ho must be careful not to be killed by them. Suddenly, he saw Seo Young and his team in the distance, but unfortunately the team was already exhausted. But Seo Young was as brave and strong as ever, crushing moles like little ants. He was already exhausted when the mole attacked him from behind, but Lee Ho came and pierced the mole like a kebab on a skewer. They were happy to see each other, but standing next to the lifeless bodies of Seo Young's team, they felt sorry for each other. Suddenly, a huge mole. Seo Young asked what it was. Lee Ho answered him because he already knew that after the usual monsters, there is a boss. After the victory, they returned to the academy where the head of the academy made a speech that they were sorry that some of the cadets did not return and promised to make up for it. The weather was also mourning the non-returnees. Lee Ho couldn't accept that he couldn't save everyone, and Oh Yoon supported him, saying that he did his best. Slipping Lee Hong a handkerchief, he said that he was really more than a regressor and he would still ask him for advice sometimes. Wiping his face, Lee Ho said that tomorrow's Lee Ho will no longer be him because they are going back to the tower. He knew that they would climb to the top of the tower and create their happiest ending, and he and his team headed for the exit. Back in the lobby, they were very happy to have completed the mission, even though they felt older. It turned out that the reward for the mission was items that were not in the store, but the difference in levels was different for everyone. Of course, Lee Ho realized that his level was higher. He was expecting a first-place award for the hidden mission, but he was already happy to have gotten an item that added a subclass slot. He eagerly awaited the results of what subclass he would get, and his thoughts were different and Shadow Savior and Master of Runes, or maybe God of Coins. Soon the result came and he received the Beast Tamer subclass. Lee Ho did not understand why this was because he expected something much cooler. Then he remembered how, before the apocalypse, a little cat had followed him, but he couldn't take it. He had a huge money problem at the time, so he just ran away. He imagined he was an animal tamer, but it's not that bad. Animals are cute, and Lee Ho loves them. There's a new manual that says there's a monster on the 7th floor that can be tamed and will be very useful. This time, Lee Ho is looking forward to a new challenge because it will give him the opportunity to get a new useful pet. But there's a mission on the 6th floor, and it's called Infinite Struggle. The team continued as before to confront the monsters friendly together, destroying them one by one, but they turned out to be very many. The monsters were different. But the good thing about this mission is that they can get a lot of experience points for it. It was strange, thought Lee Ho, because on the 5th floor they didn't get any points at all for the monsters. Lee Ho looked at his manual and saw that he was already at the 5th level, but it didn't matter to him because he had raised all his stats to the maximum. But until he overcomes the limit with training, he can't raise anything gold. He has to train hard now. When he heard the gunshots, he saw Song So-young. Her stats were increasing non-stop, and it seemed that the thugs had no limits on those stats. As rude as she is, she's helping Lee Ho feel it's time to tame the monster. Players for some reason in the Tower of the End of the World did not meet, not a single boss monsters, but logically they should be here. Suddenly, they noticed that there was a new item in the store, a stone of changing the probability of amplification, which amplifies items by a certain amount. The players have maximized their abilities and the new mission has begun with renewed vigor. With the ring, Nike Lee Ho realized that he could do a lot, but he had another mission waiting for him to strengthen, and he remembered about the pet. Players bravely fought the monsters, but it was very difficult to find these reinforcement stones. Kim So-yeon was the first lucky one to find the reinforcement stone. He was very happy. Of course, he is a self-confident narcissist who didn't doubt that he would find it. Time flew by insanely fast. Lee Ho was surprised that there were already less than 2 hours left. He had not yet found his pet and tame it with his bare hands. In the intervening time, he has been able to meet the king bear. Yes, he is certainly cute, but very clumsy. Also met a wolf of level 18. He is big, strong, fast, but no stamina at all, unfortunately. I also came across a strange two-headed cat. Yes, it's cool, of course, it purrs soothingly, but it was confused by these 2 heads. In the guide, and were specified these 3 abilities, but Lee Ho did not realize it immediately. He was comforted by the fact that he found 3 stones of reinforcement, at least something. But if he doesn't find the pet, the 7th floor is meaningless to him. As suddenly behind the bushes he saw something surprised, he decided to go look. As he got closer, he found an insanely strange creature, Kentao. It was a very strange monster. Standing in front of him in a stand, Lee Ho looked at him and realized that he did not want such an ugly pet. However, Kentao Lee Ho did not like it either. And because of his strong steel spring leg muscles, he was also unrealistically fast. Comparing him to the cute kitten bears and badass wolves, he realized that this Kentao was just the pet he was looking for. He managed to tame the pet, and now he has to choose a name for his new pet, so he chose the name Ken-su. Just thinking that he could still pick out a cute pet that happened, and his powerful Kentucky suddenly became a cute little baby. After completing the mission, the players returned to the lobby, and here they saw Lee Hong's pet Ken-su, how they were smiling at his cuteness. Everyone wondered where he came from. Then Lee Ho explained that he had a new subclass called Animal Tamer, so he tamed Kentucky. Then Lee Ho asked his comrades if they had been able to improve their equipment. Seeing the lowered heads, he realized that the answer would be no. He had a premonition. And only Youngwoo embarrassedly revealed that his adventurer's backpack had become high level. Is when he stole the repairman elf's hammer thanks to it. According to the guide, he was able to improve his backpack 3 times. Surprised Che Yesol asked, Lee Hong, didn't he improve anything? He boasted that his unique weapon now had a unique class. Everyone was very happy about his accomplishments, and no one doubted that he would be able to do it, but Song So-young was not happy because she had not obtained a single improvement stone. In the foyer was like a festive atmosphere. The players were in high spirits as suddenly the lights went out. The players tensed up in a moment. Kum appeared at that moment and said that he had prepared a show, but the players did not expect anything good from him. He asked the players if they had ever looked at others and envied their abilities and wished they had such abilities, a question that made the players very wary and frightened. He gave the guys an event that said they had to ruin a player from another zone and their random abilities would go to the winner. They didn't know each other. Lee Ho thought that if these people were normal, they would work out a way to get out of this situation without sacrifice. But Seo Young didn't want to point her gun at this. Lee Ho had hoped that she had become more human after the previous missions, but no, she's a thug. The players from the other zone tensed up when they saw Song Seo Young Che Kyung-do's weapon pointed at them, thinking that it was a challenge to fight. Kum wished them to have fun, and then some players got a message they did not come to all players. Everyone they came to tensed up. It said that within 10 seconds they had to go to another room. If they didn't, they'd die. The time passed very quickly, but Lee Ho managed to run into the room where a very serious man was sitting. His name was Choi Kang-do from the commander's class. Something told me that the tower was trying to provoke the players and turn them against each other so that a fight would be inevitable. Kang-do walked over to the table and handed Lee Ho a glass of water and said that he thought Lee Ho was a leader no matter what his level was and that he didn't want team battles either. Listening to Lee Ho, he realized that he was not as simple as he seemed, but still, he spoke convincingly enough about the world. Choi-do said that he didn't want to lose any more of his comrades to the bloody plans of the damn tower. Listening to him, Lee-ho thought maybe he is just like him and sincerely wants to protect his comrades and no longer wants to be a victim and go along with Badu. Then Choi-do offers to cooperate with them, but Lee-ho also wanted to. But how to communicate their intentions to the teams, since they are in different locations? Thinking Lee-ho thought perhaps the only option to resolve the situation that skill to use, but somehow need to pass this plan to the players. Chae-do then said that he had telepathy, and if he was sure that his guys wouldn't be attacked, he would telepathically tell his guys not to attack. Of course, Lee-ho was surprised that he opened up to him, but if they wanted to complete the mission without casualties, there was no other choice. Lee-ho's group was generally peaceful and has no desire to attack, but he explained to Choi-do that one member of the group he cannot control. Of course it was Seon Seo-young, but Lee-ho gave his word that if she starts making trouble, he'll stop her. Well, Chae-do trusted him and agreed by plugging in his abilities. He began to relay information to the players on his team. After successfully negotiating with the other leader, he went on to the next room, which was empty, but he needed to find Seon So-young. Remembering that when he passed the mission on the 7th floor, the amount of his gold was over 50,000, he bought a random box. It was time to open it. In the box was a map that allows you to see the location, and the players turned out to be a 5-story hotel. Looking into it, Lee-ho reassured that all is well for now. When he looked at this map, he saw that Song So-young was on the 5th floor. For some reason, she wasn't there alone, but with Kim So-young. When he saw them, he saw Kim So-young on the floor, lying lifeless on the body of the guy from the second team. Lee-ho threw himself at him and shouted at him that he was a scoundrel for doing this. He had spent so much time and energy negotiating so that no one would die on this mission. But Kim So-young didn't know about the negotiations and explained to Lee-ho that this guy attacked him first and he had to defend himself. Suddenly, Lee-ho received a message saying that murderers have eyes with which they can see how many people another person has killed. Then he realized Song Song assassin, and when she pointed her gun at Choi-do, she just saw the amount of his evil deeds and how many people he had killed. Then Lee-ho decided to meet with him to find out. He told him to stop pretending to be white and fluffy, and he'd realize his rotten nature. He told Lee-hong that he liked his ability and was thinking of taking his life and getting it for himself. Then Lee-ho asked why he makes his team do evil and not send people to the other world himself, because that way he would get more power. He replied to Lee-hong that when his army gets strong, he gets stronger and stronger. He was getting so strong that he laughed in Lee-ho's face and told him that he would never defeat him and his army alone. After fighting, Lee-ho realized that the opponent was really very strong and had long iron claws. And plus, he wasn't alone with his warriors. Then Lee-ho called his pet Ken laughing. Choi-do said the two of them couldn't handle it. But Lee-ho was confident in himself, and his pet Ken was very strong with powerful paws and tail. Using counterattacks and their full power, they took out the army of Choi-do's 6. Surprised at how easily they had dealt with his guys, Choi-do asked why Lee-ho had left all the guys alive. He couldn't survive in the tower with such gentleness. This villain was like a pawn controlling the men. It was clear the fight wasn't over. He wouldn't give up so easily. His warriors seemed to revive and with renewed vigor entered a new battle, not an easy hard fight. Lee-ho suddenly realized that it was not healing these guys, but just Chae-do lifted them up using all their life force. And also proud of himself, said to Choi-do that in this state, warriors have all their abilities become twice as powerful. This really pissed Lee-ho off, and he started yelling that he would ruin the guys. You can't treat your comrades like this. They're not expendable. But Choi-do didn't like it. So he started making excuses that his life was more important than theirs, and that since Lee-ho was here, he had sins too. Yes, he said, I'm not a saint and I don't consider myself a hero, but if there is a chance to save a person, he will do it because he is a man with a heart and soul. But in this situation, he's going to have to do what his heart tells him to do, not what his head tells him to do. He realized he had no choice but to stay cold-blooded. If he didn't deal with them now, his close comrades would be in danger here. Taking their special weapons, Lee-ho and his loyal pet Ken Young went into battle. It was brutal, but they must do it to save their comrades. After dealing with the pawns, they dealt with Choi-do. He was not happy that he met with Lee-ho and confessed that his comrades were just pawns to him. But no matter how much he repents that he's wrong, rules are rules, and according to them, Lee-ho is the winner and part of Choi-do's powers go to him. The mission was completed because in Area C-1520, most of the players did not survive, but Lee-ho's team seemed to have all returned. They were resting after the fight, happy to be alive. Some barely made it through, and some of their opponents just disappeared. When Seo-sung was sitting on the sidelines, Lee-ho approached her and apologized for the misunderstanding, but she was unapproachable and said that it wasn't for their sake that she did it. Looking at her, Li Ho wondered why she seemed so villainous if she wasn't like her by nature, or if something had happened to her. Their attention was drawn to a loudspeaker saying that the mission was complete and they would soon embark on a mission on the 8th floor, but things are moving fast. Of course, both Li Ho and all the players realized that the 8th floor would have special challenges. He noticed that his stats had increased. He remembered his words about humanity and realized that he didn't have the right to say such things yet. He still had to work on pure skill. Announce the beginning of a new mission. It is called the Hall of Upgrade Qualification Players, who have passed so many tests were ready for everything. The screen appeared, but on it was not the usual Kum, but the middle manager of the tower, and his name was Kim Strange. His name thought the players. The mission will be in the Zone 456 Skill Renewal Room where the gladiators gather, and the only ones who can get to the next floor will be those who renew their qualifications. Those who can't will die, and he announced Phase 1. The rules require them to form a 4-man patty to hunt the Jagam mammoths. Whoever loses dies 2 hours to complete. But something didn't add up. Li Ho calculated that there were 36 people, just enough for 5 packs, but the monsters were only 8. Players are worried if the number of patty and monsters do not match what will happen to the patty, which is superfluous. Kimim replied that it's not their game, but since it's just the first phase, he'll be kind and add one more additional condition. The stipulation stated that the death of one player in the portal equated to a Jaga mammoth hunt, but the players didn't understand how this would even play out. A portal opened, but the players panicked and tried to gather the party as quickly as possible, when some strange guy came out and asked if there were any murderers present. It was the killer Han Gang-hyuk, but it wasn't clear why the killer was looking for others like him. It was strange. Lee Hoon's party was formed and the murderer Gang Hyuk is in it, but it's good for him to know what he is and what he's up to. Looking in Li Ho's guide, I read that in the northeastern part there is a hidden object, the leader of Jagam mammoths, locked inside the barrier. But Li Ho had a mini-map opening it. He saw that the red dots were regular Jagamas, and the golden one was a hidden facility where the leader was. Well, Li Ho thought they'd have to try hard to catch him and then no one would die. Advancing, they met a huge mammoth with red eyes and huge tusks. After all, Li Ho was able to find the leader of the jaguar mammoths. New players were surprised that with such a small level he was able to. But Seo Dong-ho started praising him for how cool he is despite his level. He's a god to someone who knows him. Gang Hyuk didn't stop looking at me with a stare that gave me goosebumps. It wasn't good to be in the crosshairs of his gaze. Now they have to somehow remove the barrier from Jagam, but he's not affected by any of the attacks. Not even a scratch. He's very strong. Then Li Ho took out a guide and read that according to the instructions, the barrier would open automatically after they killed 5 ordinary mammoth Jagamas. But he knew for sure that the leadership would not give them an impossible task. Looking at the map, he saw that 4 mammoths had already died. Suddenly, Li Ho noticed that Gang Hyuk had easily separated the head of a female member of the team for no reason, which shocked the remaining members. Naturally, Li Ho was furious and shouted at him because it was such an incomprehensible and stupid act. But Gang Hyuk stood there as if nothing had happened, smiling and answering that it was just a precaution in case the barrier didn't open. Even Seo Jun-ho was freaked out by his action because you can't kill people for insurance. He said he was sorry that Gang Hyuk was on their team. Then Li Ho took the weapon in his hands and said that it was partly his fault because he had let his guard down, even though he knew that he was a thug and that no good could come from him. The thug replied that he could kill all of them and then he could only take the reward for himself, but that was not the answer you would expect from a thug. Unfortunately, their party is not friendly at all, and with such an attitude to pass the mission will be more difficult because they are already fighting with each other. This crazy thug couldn't stop trying to kill everyone in their party. Li Ho told Seo Jun-hun to retreat now, but he wasn't going to back down and leave his comrade fighting thug Gang Hyuk and received a strong blow from him in the chest. It was a powerful blow. Li Ho blamed himself and didn't understand why he needed all these achievements if it didn't help him save a single comrade. That rascal Ga Hyuk didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt, yet he was mocking Li Hong's feelings and was just about to teach him a lesson when suddenly they noticed something. It turned out to be a barrier that opened with a massive explosion. To save Seo Jun, he loaded him on his shoulder and carried him under a big tree. Luckily, he was still breathing, so there was a chance. Watching the thug Gang Hyuk, Li Ho realized that he is a strong opponent, and partly with him even more pleasant to fight, and his weapons are unique. His weapon. Aura Blade, a unique weapon. Aura moves separately from the blade, cannot guess where the aura will fly, and impressive his exclusive skill of a soul killer. Of course, Li Ho wanted to deal with this scoundrel, but he realized that he was weaker than him at the moment. It was more important to deal with the leader of the mammoths. The battle continued. The dark leader of the mammoths was strong, but together they managed to defeat him and get the reward for clearing the hidden object. Of course, Gang Hyuk was happy that they were able to defeat him. He said that even though he didn't find the killer, he managed to find something interesting. Lee Ho asked Gang Hyuk why he was looking for a murderer, and he asked if he knew any. Everyone returned to their original position, all very happy to see Seo Jun thanking Lee Ho for saving him. He was genuinely happy that he was able to save him. Remembering Lee Ho's conversation with Gang Hyuk as he laughed, calling him funny for saying that he knows the killer and it's himself. Then Lee Ho told him that he would tell him who the killer was, but in return he wanted answers to his questions after thinking Gang Hyuk agreed. Then Lee Ho continued. He said that there was a killer in his location, but he was special. He somehow got an exclusive firearm. He asked if this man was the king of the murderers, and Gang Hyuk was surprised to hear that such a thing really existed. Of course, Lee Ho didn't know if there was a king of murderers, but it's not a bad bait to look into his eyes. Gang Hyuk asked who the murderer was. He gave the fictitious information to Gang Hyuk. Now it was his turn to ask, and he asked why he was looking for the killer and what was the purpose of it all. His shoulder was still sore from this conversation, though he had learned much-needed information that on the Day of Blood the characteristics of the murderers would blossom, and there would be carnage. Now that Gun Hyuk knows that Blood Day is coming up, that's why they need to team up together. Since the day he was designated as Sung Seo-young's main target, that Day of Blood just won't leave his mind. Judging by the guide, if on the Day of Blood, a murderer takes someone's life, he'll get huge rewards for it. What wildness thought Lee Ho to them officially for them to destroy people allocated time to wait for this day is very difficult. He wondered if Seon So-yeon was of the same opinion and what the nature of those murderers really was. He understood Gang Hyuk's nefarious plans, and he decided that whatever it took to deal with the scoundrel on this floor and stop him from causing trouble. Kim suddenly appeared, startling the audience and asking who was the guy who had found the hidden mammoth, shocking all the players by saying that thanks to the one who killed the hidden monster, too many people survived to volunteer for the murderers. He said that at least 4 players had to die, asked him if a certain number of players had to die on each floor. And if the 4 men don't die, they won't go any further. To which Kim replied yes, and that he could take them out by accident, but it's boring for him. He also said that the murderer would receive a special reward for his death, advising him to sacrifice the weakest and most available player. And one player decided to talk to Kim, saying that he just wanted to watch them face off against each other and take each other's lives. Lee Ho players tried to stop it according to the guide. You cannot provoke Kim. The player did not listen, thinking that he is behind the screen, his task is only to give tasks. Of course, Kim did not tolerate such an attitude to himself and severely punished the player who behaved inappropriately towards him. He explained to the rest of the players that even though he's behind the screen, he will get to everyone, and logic doesn't work in the Tower of Doom. Getting angry with all the players, he asked them if they were going to destroy each other or if they preferred to die by his hand. The players were very frightened, trusting Lee Ho. They asked him what they should do. It was clear that Kim was serious. Lee Ho understood this too. Then Lee Ho and Gang Hyuk volunteered for the mission. Lee Ho realized that this was his chance to finally take down this thug once and for all. Then a special mission was launched. Gang Hyuk Riley said that he didn't want to ruin him. He was surprised that Lee Ho chose him as a rival. Gang Hyuk was confident of his victory, thinking that Lee Ho was no match for him. Lee Ho said that strength is not measured by the number of people killed. Wondered Gang Hyuk, what does he know about the eyes of the murderer? Lee Ho said, in the tower, there are many ways to become stronger, not only him. The battle of the 2 gladiators was started. When Lee Ho crossed his arms, he realized that Gang Hyuk was many times more powerful than him. Despite having a unique and rare weapon, Lee Ho had a hard time dealing with it. His deadly blows are somehow connected to the eyes of a killer. Outnumbered, Gang Hyuk taunted him, saying that he was verbose, that he expected a much fairer fight from Lee Ho. Of course, Lee Ho realized that his strength was not enough to defeat the enemy, but he knew that he was not alone and he had a pet. Unable to do it alone, he called on his trusty sidekick, Ken-su's pet. And Ken-su entered the fight, delivering blow after blow. Gang Hyuk wondered what kind of strong kangaroo he was and where he had come from. Now that the 2 of them outnumbered Gang Hyuk, he began to complain that it wasn't fair to call for help. Lee Ho smiled and asked him if he had chickened out and couldn't handle the 2 of them. To which he replied that for him it does not matter the number of opponents he will send to the other world, all without exception. The fight was difficult. Gang Hyuk had an unrealistically powerful aura blade, but Lee Ho remembered that during the mammoth hunting mission, he had noticed its only weakness. It was that after Ken-su's attack, he would use his abilities to their full potential, but his mana would be used up very quickly. The difficulty was that it was impossible to predict his blows. Lee Ho has absolute instincts, so he decided to use them to dodge the blows. He decided to hold out as long as possible while Gang Hyuk uses mana, and then he'll save the skill he uses against him and they'll win. The fight continued, but Lee Ho could not strike him a powerful blow because of his aura blades. He used them a lot without letting him get close to him. But thanks to Kensu, their chance of victory has increased because he is a very strong, fast, agile kangaroo, and thanks to him they are still holding on. There came a point when his mana was practically at zero. He was much weaker and more vulnerable to their blows. At that moment, they decided to jointly attack Gang Hyuk while his strength is running low. But Jen Hyuk didn't want to give up, and he wasn't used to winning. At that moment, Jen Hyuk gathered the remaining mana and delivered a crushing blow, which was taken by Kensu, with a blow that separated his hands. Kneeling in front of the limb, Lee Ho didn't realize whether his pet was alive or not. Gang Hyuk said he fought well, but he didn't rely on himself, only on his pet, and that now he's kneeling before him. But Lee Ho got angry and said that Kensu is not just a pet. To which Gang Hyuk replied that people are fools to get attached to someone and call them friend, then when they lose that person they get attached to, they get hurt. To which Lee Ho replied that what makes people human is a peaceful life in which they have fun and friendship, and if the fight is shoulder to shoulder and not the evil that it radiates. He also said that Gang Hyuk chose the wrong road of evil that will inevitably lead him to loneliness, which of course Ga Hyuk disagreed with. The angry Gang Hyuk didn't want to continue the conversation any longer, wondering if even before his demise, Lee Ho clung to his humanity. After the fight, he did not stop pissing off Lee Ho, saying that he could not do anything without the pet and that he was like a cockroach-crushed Kensu. To which Lee Ho replied that he was not dependent on the pet, and thanks to it he was still alive and was able to deplete its mana to zero, which would make it easier for him to win. That made Gang Hyuk very angry, and he jumped up, bringing his blade over Lee Hong's head, telling him to go to the next world as quickly as possible. But he was able to dodge Gang Hyun's blade. He applied the level of a medium swordsman with the words that it was his turn to strike. At the last moment, when Lee Ho had no chance of winning, he suddenly discovered a new ability that even Gang Hyun was shocked by. Looking at the manual, Lee Ho saw that his swordsmanship level had increased to the second medium level, and he was now able to release. The release power was impressively high, and because it came at the very last moment, he was able to send Gang Hyun to the other side. He stood and remembered his pet, how powerful he was and how strong he was. He mentally apologized to him and thanked him for his service. At that moment, a message came to him saying that the dead summoned animal would be able to summon again in 24 hours. While he was rejoicing that his pet would be revived, Kim Kim appeared on the screen and said that he liked obedient people very much and congratulated Lee Ho on his victory. He also said that since the murderer had died, the missions on the floors would be much more difficult. Lee Ho could not understand what he was saying and what he wanted to say. Then Kim Kim explained that the Soul Crafters are not just the strongest tower elite, but they are part of the mission complexity school. Then Lee Ho realized the more they send the murderers to the other side, the harder it will be to get back up. But if they are not stopped, there will be a great catastrophe. Because he did well, he was sent on a second mission with some kind of special reward. He went to some familiar place that reminded him of a comic book where some old man was sleeping. When he looked at the mission manual, he found it vague. He needs to achieve a certain success in training. If he fails, he's dead. But it's nice not to have to compete with anyone, Kim Kim added, that since he got the Demon's Demon Death achievement, he would get a special reward. Warily approaching the sleeping old man, Lee Ho asked him who he was, mentally wondering if he was his special reward. Stretching after his sleep, the old man said that he was a heavenly demon, and now he would be his master and train him. And Lee Ho thought it was the master from the webtoons of martial arts, but the old man was not like the canon. He looked more like a Shulin master. Suddenly, the master knocked Lee Ho on the head so that he got a lump. He said that Lee Ho got because he had impure thoughts. Holding his head, Lee Ho wondered if he could read his mind, but this blow was obvious. He just didn't have time to react to it. The master prepared the stick to strike and told Lee Hong that he would repeat the strike and that he needed to concentrate and block his strike this time. With his absolute sense, Lee Ho was sure that this time he would not screw up because the first blow was unexpected and he already knew about the second one. He shouldn't have been so confident because he couldn't block the second blow and he got hit in the head again, so he sat down from the pain. The master told him that the problem was that he could increase his perception, but it wouldn't do any good because his body didn't have time to react. But how could it be that his agility had reached its maximum? But the master said that it was not a matter of whether he was fast or slow and ordered Lee Hong to attack him. He said to take his best weapon, and into the fight Lee Ho agreed. He just had to let go of the idea that he was an old man after all. But he didn't know what to expect from the wizard because even in his status window there was no information about him. He really was an unreadable monster. After beginning his training with Master Li Ho, he decided that he would activate his second-level swordsmanship ability and be able to show that he was capable of something. After starting the fight, Li Ho realized that the old man is a worthy opponent for him. He is much stronger than it seems, and he decided that he has something to learn. The old man said that his skill and ability was negligible, and no matter how much he swung his sword, it was just trash in kindergarten. Of course, Li Ho didn't agree with this because he thought that his skill was that of an average swordsman and not just a magical ability. The master also said that in order for him to be able to transfer his fighting abilities to him, it was first necessary to remove the magical techniques from his body. Of course, Li Ho did not agree to the master taking away his abilities because they are the basis of the tower system, but the old man said that he did not care about it. He was against it. Without his powers, he wouldn't live to see it. The old man said if he didn't reach a certain level of success, he'd die. The time in the hourglass continued to dwindle mercilessly, and Li Ho did not understand how he would manage to go through everything from scratch in such a short time. He's just an average swordsman, to which the master said the wisdom that the smaller the vessel, the more fixated it is on its contents. Thinking it was all he had, he said he wasn't going to talk him down, and it was up to him to live like a frog in a vessel or accept his training. He also added that many people would give their lives for a crumb of his knowledge, and he is such a fool to pass up such a chance. Or thinking that he knew that a fight based on skill and stats alone could not be eternal. After weighing the pros and cons, Li Ho said that he agreed that from now on, he was his apprentice, he would heed his words and do whatever he ordered. He felt that after removing his skills, he had restored all his previous levels. He didn't know how long his teachings had lasted, 2 or 3 days, but after the death of his doppelganger, he had become even stronger. But even before the clock has half the sand left, he will surpass his achievements, thought Li Ho at the time. The master praised him that he was able to surpass the previous version of himself. Li Ho bowed and thanked him for his teachings, because thanks to him, he was able to achieve this. The master laughed and said that he was still low, but it was to keep Li Ho relaxed, but he didn't really think so. The master thought to himself that Li Ho still had great potential, and that with intensive training, he would be able to possess good qualities. Frowning, he told Li Ho that they were now officially apprentice and master, that he needed to show more respect and always worship his master, knocking him on the head again for disobedience. But Li Ho asked the master in surprise if they had not been master and apprentice before, to which the master asked he does not call someone just because he was taught to walk. Li Ho did not understand what the master meant. Master explained that from now on, he would train him to wield the sword he had refined based on the heavenly demon's unique technique of the greatest swordsmanship of all time, and it's called the Shadowless Ghost Sword. The master said that by the age of 29, he had already possessed 7 branches of Chonma, for which he was hailed as the greatest genius in the world of martial arts. Then he ascended to the throne of the celestial Chonma. Then people said of him, the greatest Chonma of all ages had appeared. And so he devoted his life to the art of the sword, achieved union with the blade, and ascended to be in this tower. He was treated harshly, however. He also said that only when he was in the tower he realized that his journey is not yet complete. Very surprised Li Ho turns out that the master is also a hostage of the tower, to which he replied that he has a certain agreement with the tower. He just plays a certain role and is not tied to the tower. At any moment he can leave. Then Li Ho wondered that if the teacher was to be believed, then everyone in the tower as player NPCs, but the teacher was clearly not a player. The teacher said that by arrangement with the tower he could not tell him everything, but assured him he would master the art of the sword that haunts the soul without shadow. Bowing to the teacher, Li Ho said that he understood everything and will make every effort to learn all the skills. The teacher resented why he reacted so dryly to this art, for if he had been a disciple of another cult, he would have been jumping for joy. To which Li Ho replied that there was no time for sentimentality, and now every second counts to master such a technique, which he heard about for the first time. The teacher agreed with him, but warned him that from now on the teaching would be difficult. He would have to train very hard and be ready for anything. Even though Li Ho had removed the sword skill from his status, he realized that it was not that difficult to restore the previous level, he just had to follow the old path. But this Mu Yong Chu Ying technique, although it was calm but effective, soft but powerful, it was very difficult. Li Ho did not understand how to master it at all. To which the teacher replied that he had been learning this technique all his life, even though he was the greatest martial artist in the world. To which Li Ho said that he felt that after he started learning this technique, his sword skill that he had was deteriorating. To which the teacher thoughtfully suggested that Li Ho test his skills and what he had learned during this time fighting with him. An interesting proposal? Li Ho realized that he had barely defeated his doppelganger. He had become weaker than he was before. How could he fight the teacher himself? After hesitating, he decided that the teacher was right, because time was running out and there was no more time to wait, and they clashed in battle. The teacher showed an unreal skill moving like a ghost that made it difficult for Lee Ho to catch it was simply impossible. This time he noticed that the teacher was about to strike and he had a strategy to block an attack, but for some reason, he failed again. He did not understand why he had failed, for he had foreseen everything that the teacher had asked if he had counted on his instincts to prevent his sword. Telling him that you can't anticipate his punches, he hits either ski lunges or changes the point of impact at the last moment he is able to fool his instincts. The teacher continued to strike, but whether he realized what he was doing, there was not much time left. Lee Ho wondered if he should continue. Lee Ho's mind was spinning with the thought of what would happen if the clock ran out of time and he didn't have time to master the technique. To which the teacher replied that he should not be so impatient, that he should throw away everything he had been leaning on before and feel the texture. The teacher explained to him that everything in the world, whether tangible or intangible, has a texture. He needs to learn to sense it. If Lee Ho can sense it, he can cut through anything. Then Lee Ho tuned in because the Mu Yong Chu Hang technique sword that pursues the soul without a shadow can cut through even non-material things. He remembered the teacher's attack that he had foreseen but could not prevent because he could not feel the texture. Then the teacher ordered him to focus and concentrate, saying that Lee Ho would attack him right away. Gathering all the skills and knowledge his teacher had taught him over the days, he went into battle with him. He was able to repel the teacher's blow now. He understood what the sword meant, stalking the soul without a shadow. The teacher realized that he could teach him something. The teacher was pleased that he finally began to understand the technique, to which Lee said that in the moment of reflection of the attack, he learned the true depth of the master's teachings. Although Lee Ho tried to follow the path of the sword, clearly drawing his path, the teacher said that not every student can see the true essence of the technique. The teacher also instructed him that the secret of the sword that pursues the soul without a shadow lies not in filling but in emptying, and Lee Ho should remember that. He also added that he would be able to learn the true swordsmanship only when he reaches the limit. Putting aside all unnecessary, Lee Ho thought about the words of the teacher. He realized that a variety of techniques would benefit him more, and that if he had sought out the best techniques, he would never have achieved mastery by comparing it to the fact that no hairstyle compares to the glow of a bald spot. The teacher didn't like that comparison and banged him on the head again. Like a true disciple, he bowed to his teacher, thanking him for his instruction and that he would not forget his words and would surely reach the top of the tower. The teacher was touched and gave Lee Ho a beautiful costume because a student of the heavenly Chonma should not wear anything like a homeless person. Of course, Lee Ho was very grateful to the teacher for his gift and said goodbye to him, that they would meet again on the way to the top of the tower. After parting with his teacher, he was transported to a place unknown to him. But what was this place? He thought he was supposed to return to the gladiator's waiting room. Suddenly, in the dark corner of the room, he saw someone. Lee Ho tensed up, but it was the Kim Kim he saw on the screen that turned out to be his room. Lee didn't understand why he was there. He asked Kim Kim that question, and he said that he had a proposition for Lee Ho. Handing Lee Ho a glass, he continued. He suggested that Lee Ho take the place of the murderer, Honey Gang, whom he had sent to the world for his atrocities. After thinking carefully about his offer, Lee Ho asked if he could refuse it because he didn't want to become a murderer and kill people for rewards. After thinking, Kim Kim replied that he had no right to force him, but if he refused, he might get angry and there was no telling what he would do in that state. Of course, Lee Ho knew he didn't like to be disregarded, but he couldn't force it, but he could threaten it. Whether Ho tensed up when he thought about it or not, because if he agreed, everything he had created would come to nothing, and he would have to break through by force, which he didn't want to do. And then, he got the manual to finish the gladiator mission and go back to the 8th floor and start the trainer mission. He realized that the tower could do more than that. He realized that if he went back to the beginning of the mission, Gang Hyuk would be alive again. But what does that mean? After thinking it over, Lee Ho took the glass from Kim Kim and drank the filling and said he agreed to his proposal. And in that instant, Lee Ho became a soul killer. His vitals, life, magic, power, stamina, strength, agility, instantly increased many times over. Looking at the manual, he saw that his swordsmanship skill had a blade aura overlaid on it. But because his teacher had removed the swordsmanship skill, he didn't understand it. Then came the notification that it is impossible to impose the aura of the blade, but in return is given an alternative weapon and skills. Lee Ho felt a new strength in his hands. After that, he was returned to the rest of the players, and Chun Ho was insanely excited about his return, praising his unrealistic speed. He stood in front of them in his beautiful new clothes. Chun Ho noticed that some sort of majestic aura even began to emanate from Lee Ho. It was Heavenly Chama's gift of a unique rank of clothing that repairs itself after being damaged. He doesn't need to buy armor after every mission. But when he looked at the players, he was surprised that so few people were left alive, which was unfortunate because he had even become friends with many of them. A satisfied Kim Kim appeared on the screen and said that the last mission would be the most difficult of all. Here the players were surrounded by monsters. Mission was that they need to kill the Iron Lion in case of victory status upgrade. If not, then death. This arena was considered the graveyard of gladiators, and this is where their last mission would take place. The players realized that each of these lions had such mammoth-like strength, and the four of them had barely defeated him. For some reason, the swordsman player named Shai Gem was like a bit ill at ease with the battle. Iron lions were really impressively strong with powerful fangs, sharp, huge paws with claws. Rushing into the battle, Shai Gem shouted as if there was no way. But until the last breath, he will not just give up and went boldly into battle on the lion, when suddenly one lion was scared off by a powerful weapon. At first, everyone wondered where the blow came from, but as it turned out, Li Ho's weapon, which he had obtained by becoming a murderer, was even more pleasant to wield than he thought, because it was so powerful. Suddenly, he began to receive strange notifications of gladiator status updates, while he cannot return to the lobby and he was thrown back to the 8th floor. He got to the beginning of the mission on the 8th floor, and there the qualification resumption phase began. Looking around, Li Ho realized that he was back in the waiting room of the trainers. He was actually back here again. First, he decided to check his status, as he expected the characteristics of the killer had disappeared because Gang Hyuk had taken over again. When he looked in the inventory folder, he was surprised because everything was unchanged. But without the sniper skill, it was all useless, but he decided to leave it all. But now, he could mentally send a message to 5 people, and he decided to warn his comrades, Seo Junho and Han Gang Hyuk, because he is going through the ring alone. His message was heard by Seo Jun, mistaking it for God's voice. But most importantly, he will survive this gladiator mission. Next, Li Ho decided to summon his favorite pet Ken-Su, whom he lost in the fight against Gang Hyuk. Their meeting was very tender and long-awaited. They missed each other very much and hugged each other, happy to see each other. Suddenly, Ken-Su told Li Hong to move away. Suddenly, there was a strange, unpleasant man behind him. He was admiring Ken-Su and how he was so cute still alive, but where did this man come from? Suddenly, this man with his huge 3-headed dog grinned and hissed, "Does Ken-Su want to be lunch for his beautiful Kelwi?" They were distracted by Kim Kim appearing on the screen, who greeted them and reminded them that he hated being ignored and advised everyone to listen to him now. But Li Ho didn't want to listen to anyone else. He was angry at that unpleasant man who dared to treat his favorite Ken-Su as food. Then Kim Kim went on to explain the details of the mission. It said that one must win the Battle of the Pets. The victory renews the trainer's qualification. In case of losing the mission of the 2nd level, even if you don't die while completing the mission, players still remain in the game. Looking at the screen and listening to Kim Kim Li Ho agreed that in principle the rules are loyal, since there are only 4 players in the mission. As fate would have it, Li Ho and Ken-Su had to contend with that unpleasant man and his pet 2-headed giant dog. He saw that little baby kangaroo transformed into a huge, muscular kangaroo who told him he wouldn't let him hurt them anymore. This guy realized he wasn't just a pet and said it was even more interesting. Then he sicked his huge Kelwi on Ken-Su, calling him a treat again. And the Battle of the Pets has begun. Indeed, this 2-headed monster has proven to be powerful and will not be easy to defeat. Yes, thought Li. Ho has Kelwi's considerable speed, strength, and unpredictable attacks due to the fact that he has 2 heads. But there is one thing. Suddenly he stopped attacking Ken-Su and Li Ho, even though his master was giving him commands to attack. That's the trainer's weakness. Then Li Ho looked at his characteristics. He turned out to be a bloodthirsty dog, but his combat characteristics were very weak. Il Ho just didn't develop him. Because the master's combat power is below average, and because the pet must protect the master, it has a limited combat range. After reading and understanding all this information, Li Ho realized why there were so few trainers. He said, "Then Ken-Su, let's show them who is the winner here." And their battle began. Li Ho and Ken-Su. In this battle were as one. They trusted each other completely and surpassed their opponents. An exhausted and angry Il Ho didn't understand why an ordinary tamer was so good with weapons. He kept yelling for Kelva to tear them apart. But Li Ho and Ken-Su had their own plan and began to run quickly around Kelwi, thereby robbing him of his coordination and stability. Because Li Ho realized his mistake before, he was focusing on his attack, so he and Ken-Su acted out of character. Now, he's feeling him completely. He feels not only his pet, but that Ken-Su's strike and his sword create the perfect battle path clearly. This mission will be a new opportunity for Li Ho. After he got his weapon through the mission, he was sure that he and Ken-Su would be best partners even after this mission. They successfully and honorably won this fight. He passed the renewal of his trainer qualification and was returned to the lobby. The players were happy that they managed to survive the mission. They cheered and greeted each other, congratulating each other on completing the mission. The guys thanked Lee Ho for saving them. Kim Se-young said it was like hearing the voice of God. They didn't know Lee Ho had telepathic powers. But Chae Sol said she resented him for not using his powers on her, and he promised to use them on her next time. While looking at the happy kids, Lee Ho noticed Seon So-young in the crowd, but for some reason she was upset about something. Looking at the guys, he could see that not all the players had returned, but those who had returned were desperately trying to look happy while hiding their grief. At that moment, Seo-ju came up to him and asked him about the murderers who they were. All the players, especially Lee Ho and Seon So-yeon, were very surprised by this question. And Lee Ho thought about it, because now he knows a lot about who the murderers are and how dangerous Gang Hyuk was. Something even Seon So-young doesn't know. Suddenly, the thought crossed his mind that if the murderers were needed to control the difficulty levels in the tower, Song So-young wondered if he might be right. Again spoke from the loudspeaker, saying that they had an hour left before the new mission and that they had better continue to train intensively in preparation for it. Everyone continued to train Lee Ho too, because he realized that he could not ignore the training of the shadowless soul hunting technique because it was so difficult. Sung So-young suddenly came up to him and said she wanted to talk to him. Because he knew that on the 9th floor there would be a vote on Blood Day. If there were a lot of positive votes, the 10th floor would be Blood Day. He realized that when his and Song Song's realm teamed up, she couldn't use her weapons to their fullest, and she would most likely cast a vote for the Day of Blood. But Lee Ho has a card up his sleeve, and he needs to use it to make Seon So-yeon change her mind and question her decision. Then he asked her what she wanted him to do. Was she going to tell him she was a soul killer? She pretended she didn't know what he meant. With a smile, Lee Ho told her that there was no point in her hiding her identity because he was also a murderer. Then Song So-young realized how he had so many powers and told him he wasn't a killer, to which he asked if it was because he had killed so few people. These she wanted to test him on, which he said he didn't trust the eyes of a soul killer, and she realized then that he was really a soul killer and not pretending to be one. She asked him how he knew she was a soul killer, because the only way to find out is to count how many people she's sent to the afterlife. To which Lee Ho replied that he sees everything and her characteristics and the amount of her gold as well as her class and her skills. He knows everything about her. But she didn't believe him and pointed a gun at him and said he couldn't have that ability to see everything and everyone and that he was a liar. But he wasn't afraid of her weapons. He proved the opposite by saying that she had 350 units of mana left but stamina only 51. Adding that with that much mana she could use any weapon, and that her strength had increased by 3 points. He wanted to go on about dexterity. But Song So-young shouted at him that she understood everything, and for him to stop reading her like an open book, it was good that she believed. Because if she thinks he's a murderer too, she won't vote for the Day of Blood because she can't ruin him now. There's a big fine for that. Then Sung-sun asked if she could ask one last question to Lee Ho, wondering what kind of question it would be about why he had killed so few people. Or maybe she'll ask what choice the 9th floor would make based on the fact that he's also a murderer. He gave her the go-ahead for the last question, because no matter what she asked, the answer would be favorable to him. Then Song So-yeon asked him if he was a great murderer, which confused Lee Ho because he didn't know what that meant. Their conversation and the players' training was interrupted by a voice on the loudspeaker announcing that the break was over and it was time for the mission on the 9th floor. In the blink of an eye, Lee Ho found himself in an old cemetery, a very strange place, he thought. Looking around, Lee Ho didn't see any other players, so it looked like this was once again an individual mission, and he would be going through it alone. When suddenly, he saw a glow, and a nun appeared in front of him saying that he had grown very much. It turned out that this mission was called the Head of the Dead. The guide said that dead loved ones would rise and appear before them, and they need not lose their heads, but as he could not believe it, that nun turned out to be. It was the headmistress of his school, and he plunged sharply into memories of how he had been in his school days of the unpleasant situation. When a classmate accused him of stealing his wallet, he even found a witness who he coaxed into threatening him. He was Jo Jae-hoon accused Lee Ho of stealing, calling him a beggar. Lee Ho knew he did it because he came in first place in the second semester exams. He rudely laughed with Lee Ho that he is a pauper orphan and that he only lives off their rich taxpayer. Lee Ho couldn't take this bullying anymore and punished the rude man with all his might, punching him in the face with his fist. He thought he had justly punished the rude man. Then Jo Jae-hoon brought equally rude parents to the school, in front of whom the principal knelt down and apologized, but his mother didn't care. She said that if Lee Ho is an orphan, he should be quieter than the rest of the world. The director apologized and said that she was to blame for the conflict. The rude mother agreed and decided to punish the principal for this. She raised her hand at her and struck her. Watching this, Lee Ho once and for all realized then that justice without strength would lead to even greater injustice, and he then decided that he would now be like a shadow and never again draw attention to himself or stand out from the crowd in any way. And from that day forward, even if he saw someone being treated unfairly, he just ceased to exist as a person. Year after year, not believing in himself that he had the power to protect anyone, he just blended in with the gray masses. When he looked at the instruction manual, he saw that he had to kill the monsters that killed the dead. 6 hours to complete the mission, and 8 monsters in case of failure. Disaster awaits him. The first to appear in front of them was the first-level one-horned Inop of the first-level Lee Ho. It was very surprising whether it was him who had ruined the principal. He apologized to the director for not being able to protect her, which made him feel very hurt and offended. And then she was hit because of him. He remembered how gently she had hugged him and told him that now he could call her mom instead of principal, so he wouldn't worry about it because that was his parents' job. Like when he was a child, the director hugged Lee Ho. She was happy to see him and said that he didn't have to apologize to her because he had nothing to apologize for. The headmistress added that he had grown tremendously during this time, and now he could protect everyone himself in his memories. The words of the headmistress came up again. Then to him little she said that he was much kinder than many people, and that he should become a ray of light in this gloomy gray world and bring only good. Thinking about it, Lee Ho realized that only after the end of the world he began to follow the instructions of the director, and before that he tried to be inconspicuous. Suddenly, at that moment behind the principal's back, he saw an attacking one-horned raccoon he could not allow to do her any harm. He easily stopped the one-horned raccoon with one hand, because for him now it is very easy. Lee Ho has learned a lot of things during this time. But Lee Ho thought about it, because if he killed the raccoon, the principal would disappear again, and he didn't want that. But the principal told him not to think about it. The headmistress added to him that now all he had to do was follow the path he had chosen for himself. Lee Ho thought about his path for a moment. After fighting the one-horned raccoon, he realized that his path was to climb to the top of the tower, destroy it, and return to his former life. He easily defeated and dispatched the one-horned raccoon, but only time will tell if he chose the right path. As expected, after the victory of the one-horned raccoon, the director began to dissolve into particles of light and disappeared. Lee Ho said that she should rest in peace, his mom. He continued to move through the gloomy graveyard, and on his way there were different monsters that he fought bravely. K-Sol, going through the mission, also delved into the memories. She couldn't take it anymore. She remembered how during her studies, a very nice guy noticed that she spent a lot of time studying and thoughtfully brought her vitamins. After exchanging pleasantries, they went their separate ways as suddenly something began to fall from the roof, and she was very frightened. The passers-by who saw this picture watched in horror, but no one could help her. And Lish, the sportsman guy who's her friend, risked his life to rush to her aid and got there in time to cover her. Of course, Esol felt guilty because the guy had lost his leg. She blamed herself. If not for her, he would have had an excellent sporting future ahead of him. He showed up at the trial accusing her of blaming everything that happened to him on her and no one else. The guilt began to consume Esol completely, and she couldn't do anything about it but keep saying she was guilty and asking for forgiveness. Despite the danger of the monster in front of her, she couldn't do anything about it. At that moment, Lee Ho came to cover her and shouted at her to pull herself together. But it is Esol Lee Ho who must destroy the orc. He asked her to do it. To pull herself together no matter what, the deceased must be put to rest with her help. But she couldn't because of her guilt. The spirit kept whispering to her that she was to blame for his death. He just wouldn't let her move. Holding back the orc, Lee Ho told her that he understood her, that this guy meant a lot to her in her lifetime, but she should pull herself together and let him go. But with tears in her eyes, she could do nothing about it, for the spirit kept saying that he had lost everything through her fault, and he held her as if in a terrible embrace. Holding back the orc, Lee Ho continued to try to get her back. He said that could the person who treasured her could really say accusing her, asked her to think about it. Then she remembered that when she visited him in the hospital, he didn't blame her and asked her not to blame herself and not to be sad. And when she remembered and realized what a nice guy he really was, that scary hug changed to a kind, sweet hug. Looking at Li Hong as he held back the orc for her, and how he always put everything before himself, she realized that in him she saw that guy from her youth. Thanks to Li Hongyu, she was still able to pull herself together and send that evil orc to the other world. Because the point of this mission is to come to terms with the death of people close to them, and it seems to be the hardest mission they've ever been on. In the instructions, Lee Ho saw that there was very little time left. He thought about the fact that he was able to help Yesol, but she was close by, and it looked like he wouldn't be able to help everyone. He realized that the only thing he could do to help the other players was to support them telepathically and hope they would make it through this ordeal. When he saw the church, he went into it. In front of the altar stood a dark silhouette of a man. Lee Ho decided to come closer and see who it was. She turned around and was not surprised to see Lee Ho, saying that she was expecting him. He wasn't surprised to see her at all either, as if he had sensed that she was Lee Ho and asked her snidely if she was waiting for him. Then it became the terms of the vote on whether or not the Day of Blood depends on the vote of the thugs on the altar of the ninth floor. In case of agreement on the altar, you should put a red crystal. In case of refusal, you should put a blue crystal. But how many thugs are on the floor is unknown, and if the 10th floor is chosen for Blood Day, several areas are merged into one. And once the areas are united, the thugs will begin a brutal hunt for other players according to their role. Standing in front of Song So-young, Lee Ho realized that in order for him to convince her to vote against the Day of Blood, she must have people close to her. But she doesn't seem to care about her loved ones at all. Lee Ho thought, maybe she's been so indifferent since becoming a thug. Gathering himself, Lee Ho suggested that she finish the conversation that they had started in the lobby, and he asked her why she thought he was a great thug. To which Seon So-young replied that somehow he almost always makes the right and correct decisions. Lee Ho thought for a moment. Did she think that the Great Killer's authority was unshakable? And he asked her if she had finally begun to trust him. Lee Ho also thought that if she really thinks so, even though he doesn't know who the Great Killer is, he'll tell her it's him. Sung So-young told him that she was beginning to trust him and asked him what his future plans were and if he wanted the 10th floor to become a Day of Blood. To which Lee Ho replied that he thinks it's too early to have a Blood Day. Then Seon So-yeon asked why he thinks that. Raising his eyes upwards, Lee Ho said that he believed that no matter whether they were soul killers or just players, they should also climb the tower. Looking up at the full moon, he added that he had no idea how many more floors they had to go through, but he was sure there were many more to come. He also said that if they ruin all the players after that, most likely they won't last long in the tower. Arguing his words as people about such a situation say that if all the rabbits died at the end, the dog was boiled. He said that those who lose their favor will be thrown out of the tower, which is the reason to delay the Day of Blood as long as possible. Of course, Lee Ho realized that even if he made up what Seon So-young said, it could work, since even the murderers were just pawns in the game for the tower. He realized that they weren't the only murderers. If he could convince Seon So-yeon the others would vote for the Blood Day, then they wouldn't be able to fix anything. Holding the crystal in her hand, Song So-yeon said that she was beginning to think that everything that had happened to her was destined to happen to her. Lee Ho did not understand what she meant. Then she explained to him that each killer was assigned a certain unique ability. Saying that she knew how to change things, she used her hidden ability to make an extra mission available. The mission to hunt the Black Blood Wolf was given 50 minutes to complete, and the reward for completing it was that their wish would become the wish of all murderers. After reviewing the execution instructions, Lee Ho said if they pass the mission, they can postpone the Blood Day and the voting results won't be affected. As he looked at Song So-young, he wondered if she was aware of her hidden ability, because it was really like the antics of fate. Then Song So-young said she wasn't sure if they could complete the mission in 50 minutes because it wasn't clear where to look for the wolf in all those mountains. Then Lee Ho thought that in order to find the wolf faster and more efficiently, they would move on. Kensu, they got on him on horseback and he quickly jumped. They soon found a level 35 black blood wolf that was just an unrealistically scary and huge monster. As they prepared to fight the wolf, they looked in the guide and it said that the wolf could spit out a very poisonous toxic venom. This time, unfortunately, Lee Ho didn't have the perfect shield, so he came up with the idea that he and Kensu would distract the wolf and Sung Sun would attack the wolf. Surprisingly, Song So-young agreed with his strategy, but added that even though he was a great killer, she wouldn't always obey him. After discussing the tactics, they began to fight. Lee Ho used his super technique of shadowless soul hunting. The wolf was actually a worthy opponent. In this difficult battle, and the rest of the contestants had to use their skills to the best of their abilities. Just when they thought their plan had worked, Lee Ho shouted for everyone to be careful. He saw that the wolf was starting to draw poison, and that didn't bode well. He was releasing a lot of venom, a whole lake of it, and it was clear that if they missed and the wolf hit them, they would inevitably die. Brave Lee Ho rushed into battle with this dangerous, scary black wolf, but it was clear that he could not cope with it on his own. Sung Sun came to the rescue, but in order for her magic bullet skill to work better, she had to get as close to the wolf as possible. Of course, Kensu's brave and courageous pet was not left out, daringly rushing at the black wolf with his super punches. Suddenly, the wolf caught Kensu like a serpent and wrapped his tail around him with such power that he could not free himself. It was horrible, but Lee Ho couldn't just lose his pet again, and he loudly started yelling to Kensu that he was calling him off, but it didn't seem to be working. All their attempts to defeat the wolf were even. Even Song So-young's magic bullets had no effect on the wolf, as if the wolf didn't care about their attacks. Not knowing what to do already, Lee Ho thought of releasing the shadowless soul hunting technique, but at his level, he wouldn't even be able to separate the wolf's leg. They still couldn't defeat the black wolf. He was just invincible. Looking at the wolf and around, Lee Ho realized that his vision was going down, and he began to see badly. He decided that it was the poison of the wolf somehow penetrated into his body. The wolf is so powerful that nothing can take him. Not bullets, not even the technique of bestial soul hunting, not even his skin can penetrate. And when there was no hope, Lee Ho thought of something. He asked Seon Soyeon to prepare for the biggest attack. Looking at the tired and exhausted Lee Ho, Sun Sung admired that even in such a state he was still so smart, brave, and courageous. The problem is that Song So-young could only use her ability once per fight, but she had faith in Lee Ho and prepared to attack. In the fight, Lee Ho realized his mistake that he couldn't defeat the wolf before, he just tried to kill it with one blow. He realized that in his condition, he couldn't kill the wolf with one blow, but he had to do it so he wouldn't be ashamed in front of his teacher. Also, Song Song realized that her magic bullets are round, and they are not effective for penetration. They need to be shaped like normal bullets. She was able to reshape the bullets, and the penetration power increased many times, and she attacked the black wolf. Luckily, it worked, and the new shaped bullet still managed to penetrate the wolf's impenetrable hide, making a huge hole in it. Together, they managed to defeat the black wolf and pass this mission. They were tired but happy that they had succeeded. Since they passed this mission, now their vote represents all the soul killers, and they did vote against Blood Day on the 10th floor. Suddenly, Lee Ho started to make a cut on the wolf. Sung So-young was shocked by what she saw, and she didn't understand what he was doing and asked him why he was doing it. Lee Ho replied that he had read the guide, and it said that after the victory to take out of the wolf his essence and eat it, so he took out his essence. He offered Song So-yeon to eat the wolf essence, but she felt sick just at the thought. So Lee Ho sat her down and felt that something had changed. When he ate the wolf essence, he became immune to all the poisons in the tower, which made him very happy, and Seon So-young couldn't believe he could eat it. Seolong said that not only was he able to find the wolf quickly, but he was able to identify the wolf's ability the first time and asked how he did it. To which Lee Ho replied that it was all due to his power. As a great killer, Sung So-yeon said that she didn't expect anything else from a great killer. Then Seon So-yeon asked what happened, and Lee Ho said that since there will be no Blood Day, it will be harder for them to replenish the number of players. Because it is the duty of the soul killers to reduce the number of players, and if they do not do it according to the individual plan, they will be fined. Sung So-young asked if it was difficult for him. Lee Ho thought that since she agreed with him so easily, he had authority in front of her. All the deceased were laid to rest. Players went through the mission, returned all with different emotions and feelings, who that laughed hysterically. Although the monsters were weak, but emotionally this mission was difficult. Someone met with his family, which is very hurtful to the soul. Others met their beloved friends. As it were, all had to come to terms and let their loved ones go once and for all into the next world. As everyone sat there grieving over their losses, Youngwoo suddenly stood up and told his comrades that they needed to pack unexpectedly from him. But he was right. There were more floors waiting for them. Yet the players were all able to set aside their regrets and return alive to the lobby. It's good that no one gave up on the mission. Looking at them, Lee Ho realized that because they had become closer and had begun to support each other, they had become much stronger than they had been at the beginning of the ordeal. Having gathered their spirits, the players continued training. At that moment, they heard an announcement that the mission on the 10th floor was about to begin. This mission was called Measurement Trials. By the rules, players would be assigned to different specific areas of the location.